In ancient Sparta, a woman who refused to bear children for the state would be dragged to the temple of Artemis, where she would be publicly raped by 3 to 5 elite warriors while the entire community watched, and this was considered a sacred duty. Perhaps you're thinking this can't be real. Maybe you've seen the movie 300, where Spartans are portrayed as freedom-fighting heroes, defenders of civilization against barbarism. But what if everything you thought you knew about Sparta was carefully sanitized, stripped of the truths too disturbing for modern audiences? The reality of ancient Sparta makes our darkest dystopian fiction seem tame. This was a society where newborns were inspected like livestock, where 7-year-old boys were torn from their mothers to begin lives of systematic brutalization, where young girls trained naked alongside boys to breed the strongest warriors, a place where love between spouses was considered weakness, where stealing food was encouraged but getting caught meant death, where teenagers hunted human beings for sport. We need to understand this, not because these horrors are entertaining, but because Sparta's methods didn't die with them. Their ideology of racial purity, their obsession with creating the perfect citizen through violence, their willingness to sacrifice everything human for military dominance. These ideas hibernated through centuries, only to resurface in the 20th century with devastating consequences. Together, we're about to uncover the Sparta they don't teach in schools. We'll explore why Spartan husbands not only accepted but encouraged their wives to sleep with other men. We'll discover what the Krypteia really demanded of its teenage participants, a graduation requirement so horrific that even other Greeks recoiled. We'll see how a society built on hypermasculinity accidentally created the most liberated women in the ancient world, and why that very liberation became another tool of oppression. Most disturbingly, we'll trace the direct line from Spartan ideology to modern genocides, understanding how a small Greek city-state became the blueprint for some of history's greatest atrocities. We'll examine why they needed to officially declare war on their own slaves every year, creating a legal framework for mass murder that would echo through millennia. This isn't about judging the past by modern standards. It's about understanding how human beings can normalize the unthinkable, how entire civilizations can mistake cruelty for strength, how the pursuit of perfection can create monsters. Because once we see clearly what Sparta really was, we begin to recognize its shadow in our own world. In every society that values strength over compassion, conformity over humanity, the state over the soul, a Spartan warrior returns home unexpectedly from campaign. He pushes open the door to his bedchamber. His wife lies with another man. The warrior pauses, nods once, and quietly closes the door behind him as he leaves. No confrontation, no violence, no jealousy. This scene, incomprehensible to modern minds, played out countless times in ancient Sparta, not as betrayal, but as duty. The warrior knew his role, to fight and die for the state. His wife knew hers, to produce the strongest possible children, regardless of who fathered them. Welcome to the marriage bed of ancient Sparta, where intimacy itself became a tool of state control. We discover something profound when we examine Spartan wedding customs. The bride's head was shaved completely bald. She was dressed in a man's cloak and sandals. Then she waited alone in a dark room for a husband she may have never met. When he arrived, the consummation was brief, businesslike. He left immediately to return to his military barracks. This wasn't mere tradition. Every element served a calculated purpose. The shaved head and masculine clothing weren't about humiliation. Spartan boys spent their entire youth among other males in the Agoge. By age 20, when marriage became mandatory, many had never seen a woman's body. The masculine presentation eased the transition, preventing what Spartans saw as dangerous emotional attachment. Consider what this meant for the bride. Perhaps 18 years old, athletic from her own training, she lies in darkness, dressed as something she's not. Rough wool scratches against skin, accustomed to exercise in sunlight. She waits for footsteps. When they come, she knows this stranger owns her future, not through love or companionship, but through biology alone. The darkness served its own purpose. Husbands were forbidden to see their wives in daylight during the first years of marriage. Night visits only, no shared meals, no conversation beyond necessity. Emotional bonds might weaken a warrior's dedication to his brothers in arms. One fragment from Plutarch reveals the depth of this restriction. A Spartan named Lysander didn't see his wife's face clearly until after she had borne him 3 children. But here's where the system reveals its true intent. Strong men who died in battle left behind widows. The state couldn't afford unused wombs. So Sparta pioneered something unprecedented in the ancient world: institutionalized wife sharing. An older man with a young wife was expected to invite younger, stronger men to impregnate her. A husband who noticed superior physical specimens among his comrades would offer his wife to them. Refusing such arrangements brought shame on all parties. We're watching the transformation of human intimacy into animal husbandry, yet the women weren't passive victims in this system. Spartan wives could take lovers openly if their husbands proved inadequate. Unlike anywhere else in Greece, where adultery meant death, Spartan women faced no punishment for seeking stronger genetic contributors. Some accumulated multiple simultaneous partners, all with their husband's knowledge. The logic was ruthlessly simple. Every womb must produce warriors. Every strong man must spread his seed. Marriage became a breeding contract, love a dangerous luxury the state couldn't afford. Archaeological evidence from Spartan grave sites supports these accounts. We find remarkably few family burial plots. Children weren't interred with parents. Husbands and wives rarely shared tombs. Death, like birth, belonged to the state. But graves tell us something else. The skeletal remains of Spartan women show extraordinary physical development. Dense bones, muscle attachment points indicating serious athletic training. These weren't secluded Greek wives weaving at home. They were athletes, possibly the fittest women in the ancient world. The state needed them strong. Weak mothers produced weak children. So while Athenian women lived in seclusion, Spartan girls exercised naked alongside boys, threw javelins, wrestled. They ate the same food as their brothers, instead of being half-starved like women elsewhere in Greece. This created an unintended consequence the lawmakers never anticipated. Physical strength bred mental independence. Economic power followed. Spartan women could own land, conduct business, speak publicly. By the 4th century BCE, they controlled 40% of Spartan territory. Here emerges the bitter irony. A system designed to reduce women to breeding stock accidentally created the most liberated women in the ancient world. But that liberation came with a price. They were free because they were useful, independent because the state needed them that way, powerful only within the narrow confines of producing and raising future killers. The psychological toll must have been crushing. These women were raised as athletes and warriors, trained to be strong and proud. Then marriage reduced them to genetic vessels. They could take lovers but couldn't choose childlessness. They could own property but not their own bodies. They were simultaneously more free and more enslaved than any women in Greece. We glimpse this inner conflict in one historical fragment. When an Athenian woman asked a Spartan queen why Spartan women were the only ones who could rule men, she replied, "Because we are the only women who give birth to men." Pride and prison in a single sentence. The children born from these loveless unions faced immediate judgment. Within days of birth, elders inspected them. Too small, deformed, weak cry. They were carried to Mount Taygetos and thrown into a chasm called the apothetai, the deposits, as if these infants were merely flawed materials being discarded. Those who passed inspection weren't returned to their mother's arms for long. The state had plans for them. Every accepted child represented potential. But potential for what? The answer varied by gender, but the destination was the same: service to Sparta unto death. The boys would learn to kill without conscience. The girls would learn to birth killers without complaint. Love between parent and child became another casualty of the Spartan system. Mothers knew their sons would be taken at 7. Fathers saw their children rarely, if at all. Families as we understand them simply didn't exist. One Spartan mother, when told her 5 sons had all died in battle, asked only, "Did we win?" Upon hearing they had, she said, "Then I have no reason to weep." This wasn't callousness. This was survival. In a society where maternal grief was seen as treason, emotions themselves became dangerous. The marriage bed that began this horror story was just the first station in a lifelong factory of dehumanization. Next came the barracks, where 7-year-old boys would begin their transformation into something no longer quite human. But before we follow them there, we need to understand what happened to the failures, those infants thrown into the apothetae, because archaeologists have found that chasm, and what lies at the bottom challenges everything we thought we knew about Spartan efficiency. The bones tell a different story than the legends suggest. The mountain air bites with winter cold, though inside the birthing chamber, sweat pours from the mother's face. Her screams echo off stone walls as elders wait in the adjoining room, their hands already reaching for the infant who hasn't yet drawn breath. 7 men stand in shadow, the Gerousia, Sparta's council of judgment. Their fingers know the weight of healthy muscle, the firmness of strong bone. They've performed this ritual countless times. Some infants pass their test in moments. Others never leave this room alive. The final push comes with dawn light. A baby's cry pierces the air. But this sound brings no joy, only evaluation. Too weak? Too shrill? The elders lean forward, listening. Everything depends on these first moments. The midwife carries the newborn to them immediately. No time for the mother to hold her child, to memorize its face. The father stands silent in the corner. He knows his duty if the verdict goes badly. He'll be the one to carry this bundle to the mountain. Now comes the examination. Old hands probe tiny limbs, checking muscle tone, joint flexibility, skull shape. They're looking for perfection, but their definition includes things we might miss. A birthmark too large, eyes spaced wrongly, ears that seem misshapen. Any deviation marks this child for death. The mother lies exhausted, listening. She hears the murmur of voices but can't make out words. Her body still trembles from labor, yet she must appear strong. Weakness in the mother suggests weakness in the child. She forces herself upright, though blood still flows. One elder shakes his head. Another nods. They confer in whispers while the baby grows cold in their hands. No blanket wraps this child. Exposure tests its constitution. If it shivers too much, cries too loudly, that's another mark against survival. The verdict comes swiftly. A healthy boy, strong lungs, good proportions. He'll live. For now. The midwife returns him to his mother for feeding. She has perhaps 6 years before the state claims him completely. 6 years to pour whatever love she can into a child destined for brutality. But not every examination ends this way. When the judgment goes against an infant, protocol demands immediate action. The father steps forward. His face shows nothing. Emotion would shame his household, suggest attachment to defective offspring. He takes the condemned child, wraps it loosely in rough cloth. The journey to Mount Tegetos takes 2 hours on foot. Other fathers have walked this path before him. Their footprints mark the trail. At the summit, a natural chasm yawns open. The apothetae. The word means deposits, as though these babies were broken pottery being discarded. The depth makes survival impossible. The fall alone would kill, but exposure finishes what gravity begins. We don't have to imagine this scene. Archaeological evidence confirms it. In 2007, excavations at the suspected site uncovered exactly what the ancient sources described: infant bones. Hundreds of them. Layer upon layer of tiny skeletons accumulated over centuries. But the bones revealed something unexpected. Not all the remains belonged to newborns. Some skeletons showed signs of older children, perhaps 2 or 3 years old. This suggests the selection process continued beyond birth. A child who developed slowly, showed weakness later, faced the same fate as those condemned in their first hours. DNA analysis of the remains proves another disturbing fact. Many of these children showed no obvious deformities. Their bones appear normal. Their deaths came from subjective judgments, perhaps a cry deemed too weak, a temperament too gentle. The margin between life and death was narrower than we imagined. The psychological impact on parents defies comprehension. Every Spartan father potentially carried his own child to death. Every mother watched her newborn examined like livestock. Even those whose children survived knew that judgment could come later. A fever that lasted too long, a limp that didn't heal quickly. Any sign of imperfection meant another walk to the mountain. Some fragments suggest mothers attempted to hide defects. A club foot bound straight, a weak eye turned away from inspectors. But the consequences of discovery were severe, not just for the child, but for the family. Attempting to preserve inferior offspring betrayed the state itself. The examination process created its own cruel dynamics. Pregnant women exercised frantically, hoping to ensure their baby's survival. They ate specific foods rumored to produce stronger children. Some consulted oracles, made offerings to gods. Anything to avoid that walk to Tegitos. Yet even successful births brought limited joy. Parents knew their healthy children were merely on loan. Boys would leave at 7 for the Agoge. Girls would train for their own brutal purpose. The family unit existed only to produce future warriors, never to nurture or protect. This system of infant inspection spread beyond mere physical assessment. The elders looked for intangible qualities, a certain alertness in the eyes, a grip that suggested future strength, crying patterns that indicated proper aggression. They were selecting for temperament as much as body, choosing babies who already showed signs of the hardness Sparta required. The ritual took place in the Leschi, a public building where citizens gathered. This wasn't hidden. Other parents waiting their turn could hear verdicts delivered, babies condemned. The public nature served its own purpose. Everyone must witness the state's absolute authority over life and death. Everyone must accept it. Foreign visitors to Sparta expressed horror at these practices. Even in the violent ancient world, the systematic killing of infants shocked other Greeks. Aristotle wrote that while other cities might expose unwanted children to die, only Sparta mandated it by law. Only Sparta made it a religious duty. The priests of Artemis blessed each decision. Divine approval sanctified infanticide. Parents couldn't even grieve properly. To mourn a child deemed unworthy insulted the gods themselves. The state transformed natural parental love into sin. Records indicate some women bore 10 or more children, knowing most would die either in infancy or training. They became birth machines, producing offspring for the state to sort. Their bodies showed the strain. Skeletal remains of Spartan women reveal stress markers from repeated pregnancies, even as they maintained the muscle mass of athletes. The few foreign women who married into Sparta faced special scrutiny. Their children underwent even harsher examination, checked for any sign of non-Spartan weakness. Many didn't survive the first inspection. Those who did faced lifelong suspicion, always one perceived failure from joining their siblings in the chasm. But the apathete held more than infant bones. Excavations uncovered adult skeletons too. Criminals, traitors, those who failed the state in other ways. The chasm that swallowed imperfect babies also consumed imperfect citizens. From birth to death, the mountain waited. The surrounding area shows evidence of ritual activity. Pottery shards, burnt offerings. This wasn't mere disposal, it was sacrifice. Each rejected child became an offering to Spartan ideals of perfection. Their deaths purchased the supposed strength of those who survived. Modern genetic analysis of the remains reveals another layer of tragedy. Many of the condemned infants showed markers for conditions that, while visible at birth, wouldn't have prevented meaningful lives. A mild limb difference, benign birthmarks. Conditions we now know pose no barrier to strength or achievement, but Sparta allowed no deviation from its narrow definition of perfection. The mountains around Tegetos hold other secrets. Smaller sites suggest some parents couldn't bring themselves to use the official chasm. They found other places, perhaps hoping to give their children more dignified resting places. Even in a society that criminalized compassion, human nature sometimes broke through. Yet the system endured for centuries. Generation after generation of parents submitted their newborns for inspection. Generation after generation of fathers made that terrible walk. The practice became so normalized that its absence would have seemed strange. This was simply how Spartans began life, with a test that many failed. The children who passed faced their own trials ahead. At 7, boys would enter the Agoge, where different forms of selection would thin their numbers. But first, they had 6 years of conditional childhood. 6 years when any sign of weakness could still send them to the mountain. 6 years of being watched, measured, assessed. The next phase of Spartan selection wouldn't wait for inspectors to identify weakness. It would create situations where weakness meant death, where only the most brutal survived to adulthood. The training grounds of the Agoge made the apothetae seem almost merciful by comparison. The morning sun catches on small fingers wrapped around a wooden sword. 6 years old, he practices the moves his mother taught him in their courtyard. Each thrust carries desperate precision. She knows what comes next year. When winter breaks into spring, every Spartan mother counted down from birth. 2,555 days. That's all the state allowed. Then armed men would arrive at dawn, and her son would cross the threshold from child to citizen slave. No tears permitted, no final embrace, just empty arms and silence. We discover the cruelest aspect of this system in the year before separation. Mothers faced an impossible choice: pour love into a child about to be traumatized, or begin the emotional severing early. Create precious memories that would torture both of you, or start building the walls that might help you both survive. Some chose distance. They hired nurses, avoided eye contact, spoke only when necessary. Their sons grew cold before the state could freeze them. These mothers thought detachment might ease the breaking. Instead, their boys arrived at the Agoge already damaged, already alone. Others took the opposite path. They filled those final months with fierce devotion, extra food hidden in clothing, stories whispered after dark, secret symbols of protection sewn into tunics. These mothers chose heartbreak over hollowness. Their sons at least knew they had been loved, once. The archaeological record preserves traces of both strategies. Toys buried in gardens, never to be played with again. Locks of hair hidden in small clay vessels. Tiny sandals, worn smooth, saved by someone who couldn't let go. Each artifact whispers of countdown calendars marked in tears. Training for separation began early. 5-year-old boys attended pre-Agoge exercises. Not the full brutality, but tastes of what awaited. They returned home bruised, hungry, confused. Mothers had to celebrate these injuries as progress. Any sign of concern marked both parent and child as weak. A Spartan woman named Demetria left us one fragment of testimony. Her son came home with a split lip from fighting older boys. She cleaned the wound while praising his courage. That night, she found blood on her own pillow where she'd bitten through her tongue to keep from crying where he might hear. The state provided detailed instructions for this final year. Boys must sleep on increasingly thin mats, preparing for bare ground. Meals should shrink gradually, accustoming stomachs to hunger. Mothers must speak less each month, weaning sons from the comfort of familiar voices. Love itself became regimented, rationed, measured in permitted doses. Some mothers broke. The historical record mentions women who fled Sparta with their sons rather than surrender them. They rarely made it past the borders. When caught, the boys went to the Agoge anyway. The mothers disappeared. Examples had to be set. But flight wasn't the only form of resistance. Some women taught their sons secret ways to stay human. A gesture that meant, "I'm thinking of you." A song that could be hummed silently for comfort. These small rebellions passed between generations of mothers, whispered preparations for preserving some spark of self through the darkness ahead. Fathers played almost no role in these final months. They'd already distanced themselves, preparing for warrior brotherhood to replace biological bonds. A few fragments suggest some fathers secretly grieved too, but the evidence remains thin. Male emotions left fewer traces in a society that forbade them entirely. The physical preparation intensified as 7 approached. Mothers exercised their sons past exhaustion, not from cruelty but desperate love. The stronger he arrived, the better his chances. Some hired retired soldiers to teach extra combat techniques. Others paid for black market food to build final reserves of strength. What kind of love grows under a death sentence? These mothers nursed babies they might lose to Mount Taygetos. They raised toddlers who could be condemned at any moment. Now they prepared 6-year-olds for organized torture. Yet they loved fiercely, completely, knowing the price. The economy of preparation created its own market. Trainers who specialized in pre-Agoge conditioning. Suppliers who sold gradually rougher clothing. Even fortune-tellers who claimed to predict which boys would survive the training. Mothers grasped at any advantage, any edge that might help their sons endure. Dreams haunted these final months. Mothers reported the same nightmares, their sons calling for them from the Agoge barracks, empty beds that stayed empty, grown warriors returning home wearing their children's faces but with hollow eyes. The mind rehearsed loss before it arrived. Some women bore multiple sons, staggering their births to avoid losing several at once. But this brought its own torture. Watching older boys leave, knowing younger ones would follow. The house emptying in stages. Each departure reopening wounds that never quite healed. The final month brought frantic activity. Clothes mended one last time. Favorite foods prepared again and again. Stories told and retold, as if words could build armor against what was coming. Some mothers made their sons small tokens to hide in their clothing, though discovery meant punishment. A smooth stone, a scrap of cloth that smelled like home, anything to bridge the coming distance. Religious rituals offered little comfort. Priests blessed these separations as divine will. Gods demanded warriors. Therefore, mothers must surrender sons. To question this theology was blasphemy. To grieve too openly, sacrilege. Faith itself became another tool of control. The night before taking brought no sleep. Mothers lay awake, memorizing the sound of their child's breathing. Some crept to doorways, watching small bodies curled in rest. How do you prepare for amputation of the heart? How do you practice for the moment your child becomes a stranger? Dawn arrived regardless. The ceremony varied little. Armed escorts appeared as roosters crowed. The boy had moments to dress, gather his few permitted items. No breakfast. The Agoge would feed him, or not, as it chose. Mothers stood in doorways, faces carved from stone. The historical accounts preserve one detail that breaks the heart. Many boys didn't cry until they could no longer see their homes. They held their composure for their mother's sake, protecting them even in leaving. Only when distance granted privacy did 7-year-old warriors allow themselves to be children one last time. Mothers weren't permitted to follow, to watch until they disappeared. The door closed. The house stood empty. And somewhere, in kitchens and courtyards across Sparta, women who had given everything to the state began counting different numbers. Days survived. Years until they might see their sons again, if ever. The Agoge that received these boys had been preparing too. Older students sharpened their skills at breaking down newcomers. Instructors plotted optimal brutalization schedules. The machinery of transformation stood ready to consume whatever softness mothers had failed to eliminate. But first came the initiation. The welcome that would teach these 7-year-olds their childhood was dead. The first night held special significance in the Agoge system. What happened in those dark hours determined who might eventually emerge, and who would join their rejected siblings in unmarked graves. The systematic destruction of humanity began before the sun set on their first day. Cold stone presses against bare feet. 7 years old, you stand with 40 other boys in darkness thick enough to taste. No one speaks. Speaking brings pain. You learn that within minutes of arrival. The barracks smell wrong. Not like home with its bread and olive oil and mother's lavender. This place reeks of old sweat, fear urine, something else you can't name yet. Later you'll recognize it as desperation. Tonight it just makes your empty stomach clench tighter. An older boy moves between the rows of new arrivals. 15, maybe 16. His torch throws wild shadows. When he stops before you, the flame reveals dead eyes in a young face. He studies you like a farmer examining livestock. Your tunic vanishes first, the wool that mother wove, that still smells faintly of her hands. He cuts it away with a bronze knife. The blade kisses close enough to skin that you feel its chill but don't dare flinch. Flinching marks you. Everything marks you here. Next comes the hair. Not gently shorn but ripped in handfuls. Your scalp burns where chunks tear free. Blood trickles warm behind one ear. You bite your tongue to trap the sound that wants to escape. Beside you, another boy fails this test. His whimper earns a fist to the stomach. He drops, retching. No one helps him stand. The older boy continues his work. Every new arrival must be stripped of outside softness. Clothes, hair, names. Yes, names too. From tonight forward, you're nothing but what they make you. The person your mother kissed goodbye this morning no longer exists. When the cutting ends, You stand naked and shorn, shivering in mountain air that flows through gaps in stone walls. Your feet already ache from cold. You'll learn to treasure this minor discomfort. Soon, frozen feet will seem like luxury compared to other pains. Commands come in grunts and gestures. Follow. Don't follow fast enough. Pain. Turn. Turn wrong. Pain. The language of the Agoge needs few words. Bruises teach vocabulary faster than any tutor. You're led deeper into the complex. Corridors twist without logic. Darkness swallows landmarks. This too serves purpose. Lost boys can't run home. Though even if you found an exit, where would you go? The world outside offers no refuge to Agoge deserters. The sleeping hall opens before you, row upon row of shapes in darkness. Not beds, never beds, just bodies on bare ground. Each claimed space no larger than what a corpse would need. The older boys have cloaks. You'll earn yours, or die trying. Your assigned spot is wet. The boy who slept here last night didn't survive to dry it. You lower yourself onto stone that reeks of his final moments. The cold shoots through skin to bone. Around you, other new arrivals find their places. Some cry silently. Tears freeze on cheeks. Then comes the sound that will haunt every night forward. Breathing. Hundreds of boys breathing in darkness. But wrong somehow. Too controlled. Too careful. Even sleep comes guarded here. Lungs that relax too much might not fill again. Morning arrives as violence. Not sunrise through windows. The Agoge has no windows. Instead, kicks to ribs announce dawn. You scramble upright, ribs screaming, as older boys move through rows delivering wake-up calls with practiced brutality. The breakfast hall mocks its name. Long tables, empty bowls, 400 boys. Food for maybe half. The arithmetic is simple. The execution is chaos. You understand now why they took your names. Animals don't need names. And what happens next strips away any illusion of humanity. Boys transform to beasts, fighting over black bread and thin soup. Fists fly. Teeth find flesh. The strong eat. The weak watch. The weakest disappear entirely. An instructor observes from the corner. He counts bodies, not to prevent violence but to track it. Who attacks first? Who claims the most? Who fails to fight at all? Every detail enters his mental ledger. The Agoge keeps careful records of transformation. You manage to grab a crust someone drops. It tastes like ash and old grain. Your stomach barely recognizes it as food, but you chew slowly, making it last. Around you, boys lick empty bowls, suck spilled drops from tables. Pride died yesterday with your hair. Training begins immediately after the feeding frenzy. No time to digest what little you claimed. The exercise ground waits under summer sun that promises to blister pale skin. You're arranged by size, not age. A small 12-year-old stands beside you. His eyes hold knowledge yours lack. First comes running, not the joyful sprints of children playing. This is different. Controlled, measured, run until legs fail, then run more. Anyone who stops meets the whip, not dramatic flogging. Just enough sting to teach that exhaustion is opinion, not fact. The dust tastes like iron, or maybe that's blood from where you bit your tongue. Hard to tell anymore. Everything blurs together. Pain in lungs, pain in legs. Pain becomes background noise, constant as your heartbeat. Water exists. You can see barrels at the field's edge. But drinking requires permission. Permission requires perfection. No one achieves perfection on their first day. So the water taunts, close enough to smell but forever out of reach. Combat training follows running. They pair you with the 12-year-old. His name was Alexios once. Now he's just another survivor. He's supposed to teach you basic holds. Instead, he breaks your finger. Quick, efficient, like snapping a twig. The instructor nods approval. Alexios demonstrated proper technique. Your scream showed unacceptable weakness. Both lessons matter here. You cradle the ruined finger, bone jutting at wrong angles. No one offers to set it. Medical care must be earned or stolen. That's when you learn the Agoge's most fundamental rule. Everything must be stolen. Food beyond your ration, bandages for wounds, warmth in winter. The state provides nothing past bare survival. Sometimes not even that. But stealing carries its own law. Success brings reward. Capture brings punishment that makes you wish for death. The Agoge teaches theft as survival skill, then brutally punishes poor execution. They're not creating thieves. They're creating perfect thieves. Night returns too soon. Your finger throbs in rhythm with your heartbeat. Hunger gnaws deeper than this morning. The older boys prepare for something. You catch fragments of whispered planning. Tomorrow they hunt, not animals. You curl on your wet stone, trying to protect the broken finger. Around you, other 7-year-olds quietly fracture. One rocks back and forth, humming something his mother taught him. He won't last the week. Another hasn't moved since combat training. He might not last the night. The breathing symphony begins again. But now you understand its rhythm. Each boy breathes ready to fight. Even unconscious, they guard against attack. Because attacks come. Territory disputes. Food theft. Simple cruelty. The darkness hides predator and prey equally. Somewhere in the building, a boy screams. Not pain. Worse. The sound cuts off abruptly. The breathing around you doesn't change. Everyone heard. No one reacts. Acknowledging horror makes you part of it. Better to pretend sleep. Your mother exists somewhere under these same stars. Does she lie awake wondering? Does she count the hours since morning? You'll never know. That life ended with sunrise. This is existence now. Survive tonight. Face tomorrow. Repeat until you break or become unbreakable. The first week passes in fragments. Each day bleeds into the next. Your finger heals crooked. You learn to fight around the weakness. Funny how quickly necessity rewrites possibility. You've stolen your first meal successfully. Nothing grand. Half a mouldy onion dropped by an older boy. But it filled your stomach for an hour, and you weren't caught. Small victories matter when defeat means death. The boy who hummed his mother's songs disappeared Tuesday. No explanation. No body. Just an empty space on stone that another new arrival filled by nightfall. You've learned not to ask questions. Questions mark you as still human. Humanity is weakness here. Physical transformation comes fast. Your body, soft from mother's care, hardens under constant assault. Ribs show through skin. Muscles appear where baby fat melted. The mirror of polished bronze in the washing area shows a stranger's face. Hollow cheeks, empty eyes. 7 years old, with an old man's stare. But the mental changes cut deeper. You catch yourself evaluating other boys as threats or resources. Nothing more. That crying child from the first night, he's weakness that might contaminate you. The strong older boy, he's danger to avoid or opportunity to exploit. Human connections become mathematics of survival. The instructors watch these changes with satisfaction. They're not just training warriors, they're manufacturing something specific. Humans who can kill without conscience. Machines of flesh programmed for violence. Citizens who exist only for state purpose. Week 3 brings new horror. They call it the cheese feast, though feast mocks the reality. A small altar, a single round of cheese, 400 starving boys, and permission to take what you can claim. The stronger boys form packs. Strategy emerges from desperation. Some create diversions, others attempt stealth. The cheese disappears in seconds, but the fighting continues. Possession means nothing if you can't keep it. Boys beat each other for crumbs already swallowed. You learn to use your size. Smaller means faster. Weaker means overlooked. While titans clash, you dart between legs, snatch what falls. It's not brave. It's not honorable. But it fills your stomach for another day. The broken finger becomes advantage. Other boys avoid damaging already ruined goods. They seek healthy victims. Your deformity grants invisibility. You cultivate more injuries, careful damage that hinders less than it protects. Survival through selective destruction. Month 2 introduces weapons. Not real blades yet. Wooden swords weighted to match bronze. But wood breaks bones as easily as metal. Sometimes easier. The splinters cause infections that metal's clean cuts avoid. They pair you against boys twice your size. David versus Goliath. Except no one roots for David here. You lose. Repeatedly. Brutally. Each loss teaches through pain. Guard this way, or ribs crack. Strike there, or fingers shatter. Education, written in purple bruises and seeping cuts. But something strange happens. You stop feeling the beatings. Not physically. The pain remains constant. But emotionally? Nothing. That boy splitting your lip might as well be weather. Impersonal, inevitable. Neither hatred nor fear, just event and response. The instructors notice this dead-eyed acceptance. It pleases them. You're approaching what they want. A thing that feels pain but doesn't suffer. That experiences violence without trauma. Human nerve endings in an inhuman shell. Your memories of home fade like morning mist. Mother's face blurs. Her voice becomes whisper, then silence. You know you had a life before here. But knowing and feeling are different things. That past might as well be someone else's story. The present consumes everything. When do we eat? Who threatens my position? Where can I steal cloth for winter? These questions leave no room for others. Philosophy is luxury. Memory is weakness. Only now matters. Other boys break differently. Some rage, fighting everything until exhaustion or death claims them. Others retreat inward, bodies present, but minds elsewhere. These ones die slowly, forgetting to fight for food, to guard their sleep spots. The Agoge patient with passive suicide. You choose a third path. Not rage, not retreat. Adaptation. You study the older boys who survive. Not the strongest always. The smartest. The ones who turn the system's brutality into personal advantage. They don't fight the Agoge. They become it. One boy, maybe 14, never seems hungry despite never fighting during feeds. You watch him carefully. He's made alliances, not friendships, business arrangements. He provides something others value: information, protection, planned losses in training bouts. In exchange, they share food. The lesson is clear. Pure strength has limits. Intelligence multiplied by ruthlessness equals survival. You begin your own experiments, small trades, calculated risks, learning who can be trusted exactly as far as their self-interest extends. Winter arrives with its own torments. The mountain cold invades every corner. Snow drifts through those same gaps that admitted summer breeze. Now, they channel ice directly onto sleeping boys. Several freeze before dawn. The survivors strip bodies for any cloth, any warmth. You've grown skilled at theft. A cloak here, sandals there. Never enough to be comfortable, just enough to avoid death. The punishment for caught stealing intensifies with winter, as if the cold itself weren't sufficient deterrent. But you're caught eventually. Everyone is. The whip feels almost warm against frozen skin. 20 lashes. You count each one, focusing on numbers instead of pain. Mathematics as meditation. When it ends, you understand something new. They don't punish theft, they punish failure. The distinction matters. Spring's arrival brings no relief. New 7-year-olds arrive, soft and crying like you once were. You feel nothing watching them shatter. No sympathy, no remembered kinship. They're simply new resources to exploit or threats to eliminate. The cycle continues. You're 8 now, still among the youngest but no longer new. You know which instructors hit hardest. Which older boys torture for pleasure versus utility. Where to hide. When to fight. How to survive another day. But survival isn't living. You haven't laughed in months. Haven't cried either. Those responses atrophied like unused muscles. You exist between extremes, neither happy nor sad, of just present, alert, ready. Sometimes at night, that dangerous time when exhaustion loosens mental discipline, you almost remember being someone else. A boy with a name, a mother who sang, food that tasted like more than fuel. But remembering hurts worse than any beating, so you learn to stop. The Agoge is winning. Day by day, it carves away whatever your mother tried to preserve. Soon, nothing will remain but what they've built. A perfect soldier. An empty vessel filled with state purpose. And the truly horrifying part? You're beginning to prefer it this way. Caring hurts. Feeling exhausts. Better to be stone. Better to break others before they break you. Better to embrace the monster than fight becoming one. Because fighting is futile here. The Agoge doesn't just train warriors. It manufactures them from the raw material of children, and the process is working. You're becoming exactly what Sparta demands. The moon hasn't risen yet. Perfect conditions for what must be done. You crouch in the thorny scrub outside a helot settlement, knife heavy in your hand, watching smoke rise from the chimney of your target's home. 19 years old, 12 years of Agoge training have led to this moment. Every beating absorbed, every hunger endured, every fragment of humanity stripped away prepared you for tonight. The Krypteia, your final examination. The selection process began 3 months ago. Only the strongest earned this privilege. Or was it curse? The distinction blurred long ago. The Ephors gathered your training cohort, studying each candidate with eyes that had witnessed decades of this ritual. They sought specific qualities, not just physical prowess. The Krypteia demanded something harder to define. You remember standing in that line, face neutral while your mind raced. Some boys practically vibrated with eagerness. Others couldn't hide their dread. Both groups failed. The Ephors wanted neither bloodlust nor reluctance. They wanted empty vessels, tools without opinion. When they spoke your name, you felt nothing. Perfect. That nothingness earned you this crouched position, watching a family prepare for sleep. Inside, they're sharing their evening meal. Barley gruel, perhaps some olives. The helots eat better than you did in the Agoge, though not by much. Your target's profile appears briefly in the doorway. Broad shoulders, strong back from years of farming Spartan land. The Ephors choose carefully. No sick elders or weak children for the Krypteia. You must kill strength. Prove yourself against someone who might actually fight back. The briefing was precise. This man leads prayers at their gatherings. Not rebellion, not yet, but leadership of any kind among helots threatens stability. Better to remove potential before it becomes problem. You're not murdering. You're performing preventive surgery on the body of the state. A child laughs inside the house. Young, maybe 5 or 6. The same age you were when everything changed. The sound should trigger something. Memory, sympathy, recognition. Instead, you note only tactical information. A child means the parents will fight harder. Plan accordingly. Hours pass. Your legs cramp from maintaining position. Pain is old friend now, easily ignored. You've waited longer for worse reasons. That punishment week when they made you hold horse stance until boys started collapsing. This is nothing. The house grows quiet. One by one, lamps extinguish. You count heartbeats, measuring time. Give them long enough to fall deep. Not so long that dawn threatens. The Krypteia permits killing. Getting caught brings death. Not for the murder, for the incompetence. Time arrives. You move like the mountain cats they taught you to emulate. Each foot placement calculated. Avoid the loose gravel. Circle away from the dog sleeping by the door. Use the wind to carry your scent away. Lessons written in scar tissue guide every choice. The door poses no challenge. Helots aren't permitted locks. Another reminder of their status. Neither slave nor free. Something between. Something less. The wood creaks slightly as you ease inside. You freeze, counting 20 breaths. Nothing stirs. Navigation in darkness comes naturally now. Those years of midnight raids in the Agoge, older boys hunting younger ones through black corridors. You learn to see with more than eyes. The hearth's dying embers provide just enough glow to outline shapes. There, the main sleeping area. 2 forms under rough blankets. Your target and his wife. The child must sleep elsewhere. Good. Complications serve no purpose tonight. You need clean execution, nothing more. Which one first? Training, says the man. Remove primary threat immediately. But something in their positioning suggests otherwise. She lies facing the door. He faces the wall. She's the guardian. He trusts her vigilance. Kill her first, or she'll wake him with her dying. You drift closer. The knife feels alive in your hand. Bronze, not iron. Traditional for the Krypteia. Your ancestors used these same tools for the same purpose. Continuity of murder across generations. She shifts in her sleep. Murmurs something. A name, perhaps. You pause above her, studying the exposed throat. One motion. Quick. Silent. Don't let her wake. Don't let her know. Grant that mercy at least. But mercy is weakness, and weakness died in the Agoge. The blade enters just below her jaw, angling up, textbook perfect. She gasps once, eyes flying open. Her hand reaches not for the wound but toward her husband. Warning? Protection? Love? The gesture dies incomplete. Warm blood coats your fingers. The smell fills your nostrils. Iron and fear and ending. You've butchered animals before. This feels identical. Should it? The question floats through your mind without finding purchase. The husband stirs. His wife's final sound penetrated sleep. You're already moving, crossing the small space between them. He's beginning to turn, beginning to understand. Too late. Always too late when death comes calling. He's stronger than expected. Farm work builds different muscles than combat training. His hand catches your wrist, grinding bones. But you have 12 years of grappling experience. You know every counter, every escape. The knife finds his heart, while he's still trying to comprehend his wife's silence. Two bodies cooling in darkness. Task complete. Except it's not. The Krypteia demands more than simple assassination. You must leave a message. Other helots will find this scene tomorrow. They need to understand. You arrange the corpses carefully. Positioning matters. They must see that resistance brings not just death but humiliation. That Spartan youth can enter any home, take any life. That nowhere is safe. That no one is protected. The psychological warfare matters more than the killings. A sound from deeper in the house freezes you. Footsteps. Small. The child. Of course. Children wake when routine breaks, when the sounds of sleeping parents cease, when death enters their home. She appears in the doorway. Tiny, dark hair like her mother's. Eyes that haven't learned to hide emotion yet. She sees you first. Blood-covered stranger in her home. Then her gaze travels to the bed. To shapes that should be moving but aren't. You calculate options. No witnesses, the F4 said. But they meant adult witnesses. Children forget. Children's testimonies carry no weight. Children. She doesn't scream. Strange, most would. Instead, she stares with eyes that seem older than her years, as if she always knew this night would come, as if helot children grow up expecting murder to visit. You could let her live, claim she never woke. Who would know? But that thinking leads nowhere useful. The Krypteia tests more than ability. It tests commitment. Will you do what's necessary without hesitation, without conscience? The knife is already moving when she finally speaks. Just one word. Please. Soft as moth wings. The blade stops an inch from her throat. That word. You haven't heard it in so long. The Agoge strips away politeness along with everything else. This pause is weakness. You recognize it even as it happens. Some fragment of whoever you were before struggles against what you've become. But that person is 12 years dead. What stands here now is Sparta's creation. Perfect. Empty. Decisive. Yet the knife doesn't complete its arc. The child watches you with those impossible eyes. Waiting. As if she sees the war inside you. As if she recognizes something human still flickering beneath the trained killer. You think suddenly of your first night in the Agoge. 7 years old. Terrified. Would someone have paused if ordered to kill you then? Would momentary mercy have saved you from becoming this thing that murders families in darkness? The question is poison. Questions are always poison. The Agoge taught you that. Don't think. React. Don't feel. Execute. Don't remember. Survive. But she's so small. And that word, please, echoes in spaces you thought were sealed. It finds cracks in 12 years of conditioning. Seeps through barriers built from brutality. This is the true test. Not whether you can kill. Any fool with a blade can end life. But can you kill when something inside screams stop? Can you complete your transformation from human to weapon? The E4s are clever. They know some vestige of person might survive the Agoge, so they devise this final exam. Not just murder, specific murder. The kind that forces you to choose between who you were and what you must become. The child hasn't moved, hasn't run, as if she knows her fate depends on a battle she can't see. Her stillness is gift and curse. Easier to kill the fleeing, Harder to execute, the accepting. Dawn threatens the horizon. You've spent too long here. Each moment increases danger. Helot farmers rise early. Discovery means failure. Failure means death. Not clean death like you've granted tonight. Slow death. Public death. Educational death. Choose. Now. Forever. What are you? You're Sparta's instrument. Nothing more. Nothing less. The knife completes its motion. Quick. Clean. Merciful, as murder can be. The child crumples without sound, joining her parents in whatever darkness waits beyond. No satisfaction comes. No regret either. Just emptiness. Perfect Agoge emptiness. You've passed the final test. Killed not just bodies but whatever remained of your soul. The Krypteia is complete. You slip from the house as silently as you entered. Behind you, 3 bodies cool in the pre-dawn air. Tomorrow, helots will find them. Will understand the message written in their positions. Will remember that Spartan youth hunt humans for grades. The journey back to the barracks passes without incident. You avoid the main paths, moving through territory you've scouted for weeks. Every successful Krypteia requires preparation. The killing is smallest part. Other candidates are returning too. Shadows sliding through shadows. Some walk steadily, task complete. Others stumble, affected by what they've done. These ones might not last. The Krypteia breaks some men. Not through violence, through success. You report to the ephors as sunrise paints the mountains. They ask no questions. Your blood-stained hands tell the story. A mark goes beside your name. Passed. Graduated. Ready for full military service. But ready for what exactly? You've proven you can kill without conscience. Follow orders without question. Betray every human instinct. You're perfectly prepared for warfare, completely unsuited for peace. They assign you to a mess unit that afternoon. 15 other men who've survived similar trials. Your brothers now, bonded through shared monstrosity. Together, you'll form one of Sparta's elite units. Killers who've proven they'll do anything for the state. The younger boys in the Agoge look at you differently now. You wear the mark of the Krypteia. They know what you've done. Some worship you for it, others fear you. Both reactions feel equally hollow. That night, you lie in barracks that suddenly seem luxurious compared to your Agoge stones. A real sleeping mat, actual blankets, regular food, all purchased with blood. The child's face floats behind your eyelids. Not haunting, just there. Fact, without feeling. You wonder if this is what the ephors truly wanted. Not just obedience, complete emotional death. They've created soldiers who can commit any atrocity without psychological consequence. Perfect tools for maintaining their system. Sleep comes easily. Another sign of successful conditioning. You've done terrible things today. Your body doesn't care. Neither does your mind. The Agoge has built you well. Trauma slides off like rain from oiled leather. Tomorrow begins formal military training. New weapons, new tactics. But nothing will match today's lesson. You've learned the ultimate truth of Spartan society. Everything is permitted against enemies, and everyone is potentially enemy. The other Krypteia graduates share your 1,000-yard stare. Boys who entered different houses, killed different families, faced their own moments of choice. All chose Sparta over humanity. Now you're bound by shared damnation. Some speak quietly of their assignments. Technical details only. This one fought back. That one begged. Children present or absent. But no one mentions feelings. Those died with your victims. Perhaps that's the real genius of the system. You're all 19. In other cities, you'd be starting careers, marrying, building futures. Here, you've just graduated from 13 years of manufactured psychopathy, ready to spend remaining decades spreading the same violence that created you. The Krypteia serves multiple purposes. Terror for helots, final test for warriors. But most importantly, it creates unbreakable psychological chains. After murdering innocents for grades, what moral lines remain? What orders could you possibly refuse? This realization brings no discomfort. The Agoge removed your capacity for moral distress alongside everything else. You understand your role perfectly. Sparta needs monsters. You've proven yourself monstrous. Transaction complete. A messenger arrives as you prepare for sleep. Tomorrow's training begins before dawn. Formation drills, weapons practice, the machinery of war. You'll excel. The Krypteia graduates always do. Men who've killed children fear nothing battlefields can offer. You close your eyes. No dreams come. Dreams require imagination, and imagination died somewhere between that first night on cold stone and tonight's warm blood. You've become exactly what they intended. Empty vessel, filled with state purpose. The transformation is complete. You entered the Agoge human. You've emerged as something else. Something that kills without conscience, follows without question, exists without truly living. Sparta has manufactured another perfect soldier. The system works exactly as designed. And tomorrow, you'll help train the next generation to follow your path. The cycle continues. Children become killers, become teachers of killing. But first, sleep. Dreamless. Peaceful. The sleep of men with no souls left to trouble. Your parents would be proud. The state certainly is. You've given everything they demanded, received everything they promised. Worth the price? The question has no meaning here. Price implies choice. Choice implies humanity. And your humanity lies cooling in a helot house, 3 corpses arranged to maximize terror. You are Sparta now. Nothing more, nothing less. Forever. The sun beats down on naked shoulders, bronze skin gleaming with oil and sweat. A girl of 17 springs forward, muscles coiled like a hunter's bow, racing toward the finish line while hundreds watch. This is Sparta's marriage market, though no one would dare call it that aloud. Athletic competitions determine more than simple victors here. The fastest runners, strongest wrestlers, most graceful dancers. These young women display their genetic worth before an audience shopping for breeding stock. Fathers evaluate potential daughters-in-law like farmers studying livestock. Which bloodline would strengthen their own? Which girl's hips promise easy births? Which one's shoulders suggest sons who could survive the Agoge? The winner crosses the line, breathing hard but controlled. Her name is Gorgo, though in years to come she'll be remembered for more than racing. Today she's simply another competitor in Sparta's ruthless selection process. Tomorrow she'll belong to whatever man claims her, willing or not. We discover something crucial watching these competitions. Spartan women train their bodies not for themselves but for the state's purposes. Every muscle built, every skill honed serves one function, producing superior warriors. Their strength is real, their power an illusion carefully maintained. The exercises themselves would shock audiences in Athens or Corinth. These girls throw javelins with deadly accuracy. They wrestle opponents to the ground, learning holds that could break bones. They run until lesser athletes collapse, building endurance that will serve them through multiple pregnancies. All performed naked, because shame is weakness, and modesty serves no genetic purpose. A visiting merchant from Thebes watches with disgust barely concealed. In his city, proper women stay indoors, speak only when necessary, cover themselves in public. These Spartan girls move like boys, fight like boys, display themselves without blushing. He doesn't understand that their immodesty is calculated policy. How can you select prime breeding stock through layers of cloth? The competitions continue through the afternoon. Discus throwing reveals upper body development. Long jumps demonstrate explosive power. Even the dancing contains violence, not gentle movements but aggressive stamps and strikes that mirror combat training. Every event designed to showcase attributes valuable for producing warriors. Between contests, the girls oil each other's skin. Their hands move with practiced efficiency, highlighting muscle definition for better display. They've been doing this since childhood, when the state first decided their bodies belonged to Sparta's future. No embarrassment remains, only practical preparation for evaluation. Gorgo wins 3 events before the day ends. Her victories earn appreciative nods from watching elders. Strong legs for birthing, broad shoulders for carrying, quick reflexes to pass to sons. She's 17, and already her life is mapped in pregnancies and pain. That night, marriage negotiations begin, not between families seeking alliance or affection, between men calculating genetic mathematics. Gorgo's father fields multiple offers. He weighs each suitor's combat record, his family's history of producing males, his likelihood of dying young and leaving a profitable widow. The girl herself has no voice in these proceedings. Her opinions matter as little as her desires. She trained her whole life for this auction, though they'd never use such crude terminology. Spartans prefer euphemisms for their human husbandry, sacred duty, state service, anything but the truth. 3 days later, Gorgo marries a man twice her age. The ceremony strips away what little autonomy she retained. Her shaved head marks her as property transferred between owners. The masculine clothes hide the body that sealed this transaction. In darkness, her new husband claims what he purchased, though purchase too is a word they'd never speak aloud. But marriage brings unexpected revelations. Her husband leaves immediately for his barracks. She won't see him again for weeks. This abandonment, traumatic elsewhere, grants Gorgo something she never expected: freedom. Spartan wives live essentially as widows with occasional visitors. No husband controlling daily activities. No man monitoring their movements. They manage households, conduct business, train their bodies as they choose. The very system designed to reduce them to breeding machines accidentally creates spaces men never thought to regulate. Gorgo discovers she can own property, not through any progressive ideals, but because someone must manage estates while warriors fight. She can speak in public, attend assemblies, voice opinions, not from respect, but because men are too busy killing to handle civilian affairs. She can take lovers, seek pleasure where she finds it, not from liberation, but because genetic diversity serves state interests. The paradox strangles logic. Sparta's hypermasculine culture, so focused on producing male warriors, grants women freedoms unimaginable elsewhere, in Greece. But these freedoms exist only within the cage of reproductive duty. Power without choice, authority without autonomy, liberation that serves oppression. Years pass. Gorgo bears 3 sons, each ripped away at 7. She takes 4 lovers with her husband's blessing, seeking superior genes wherever they might flourish. She accumulates property as warriors die, leaving widows who sell cheap to survive. By 30, she controls more wealth than most men. By 40, she influences policy through carefully placed words in powerful ears. Yet this power comes wrapped in chains. Every freedom exists because it serves Sparta's needs. She can own land because someone must. She can take lovers because bloodlines need variety. She can speak publicly because silence would waste a resource. Her liberation is another form of slavery, decorated prettily. The gymnasium where girls train tells the story best. Young women build powerful bodies, learning their strength through competition. They feel the joy of muscles working, lungs burning, victory earned through effort. For these moments, they own themselves completely. Their bodies belong to them alone. Then the competitions end. Evaluators make their notes. Marriage negotiations begin. And those same strong bodies become currency in transactions they cannot refuse. The strength they built serves only to make them better breeding stock. The pride they felt transforms into another chain. Some women resist in small ways. They train harder than necessary, building bodies that intimidate potential husbands. They cultivate sharp tongues to discourage suitors. They pretend barrenness to avoid pregnancy's burden. But resistance has limits when the alternative is public rape in Artemis's temple. That particular horror deserves examination. Not for sensationalism, but to understand how Sparta weaponized even resistance. A woman who refused motherhood faced ritual assault by multiple warriors while citizens watched. The act served as punishment, forced insemination, and public warning simultaneously. Religious ceremony wrapped around genetic rape. The temple stones stay cold regardless of season. Women dragged there find no mercy in marble or watching crowd. The warriors selected for this duty are always elite specimens, the better to ensure pregnancy from punishment. The crowd includes young girls, forced to witness what awaits those who refuse their purpose. Education through horror, the Spartan way. Most submit before facing the temple. The threat alone breaks resistance. Those few who endure it emerge changed, carrying children they never wanted from violence they couldn't prevent. Some kill themselves afterward. The state counts these as acceptable losses. Individual women matter less than the lesson their suffering teaches. We need to sit with this ugliness, not because pain entertains, but because understanding historical horror prevents contemporary repetition. When states claim ownership of women's bodies, when reproduction becomes duty rather than choice, when strength serves only to enable oppression, geez, these patterns echo through centuries. A grandmother speaks to her granddaughter in the growing dusk, both naked from training, muscles still warm from exertion. The elder's body shows decades of pregnancies, births, losses. Stretch marks map her service to Sparta. Scars record children torn away. She tells the girl truths mothers cannot speak. How to find joy in the spaces between duty. How to accumulate power through careful planning. How to survive when your body belongs to everyone but yourself. Lessons wrapped in athletic metaphors, hidden in training advice. The girl listens with eyes too knowing for her years. She already understands her future. In 2 seasons, maybe 3, she'll stand naked before evaluators. Her speed will determine her husband. Her strength will dictate her children. Her will means nothing next to her womb. But she also hears the hidden message. That strength, even enslaved, carries its own power. That minds can stay free when bodies cannot. That survival itself is a form of victory in systems designed to consume you. Small rebellions that keep souls alive in mechanized horror. Spartan women outlived their men consistently. Not from easier lives, but from physical conditioning that served them even as it enslaved them. They accumulated wealth through widowhood. They influenced policy through careful words. They created networks of power that operated parallel to male hierarchies. By the classical period, they owned 40% of Spartan land. Their wealth corrupted the system designed to contain them. The strength built for breeding became economic power. The freedoms granted for convenience evolved into actual authority. The machine's gears began grinding against themselves. Did they plan this? Did generations of women carefully accumulate power, knowing time favored their survival? Or did it happen accidentally, an unintended consequence of treating women like breeding stock while training them like warriors? History keeps those secrets. We know only results. Spartan women achieved a peculiar dominance through systematic oppression. They found power in powerlessness, strength in submission, victory in defeat. Their story warns and inspires simultaneously. Modern observers struggle to categorize them. Victims or victors? Slaves or queens? The answer is both and neither. They were women trapped in history's most misogynistic system, who somehow emerged as Greece's most powerful females. They were athletes whose strength served their enslavement and eventually enabled their liberation. Their faces stare from ancient artwork with expressions that defy easy reading. Pride mixed with resignation. Strength wrapped around sorrow. Defiance tempered by acceptance. They were complicated humans in complicated times, reduced by their society to simple functions yet refusing simplification. The gymnasium falls quiet as evening approaches. Tomorrow brings new competitions, new evaluations. New girls learning their worth comes measured in breeding potential. The cycle continues, as it has for generations, as it will until Sparta's warrior culture finally consumes itself. But seeds of destruction already grow. Women own too much land. They control too much wealth. Their sons grow soft in comfort. Their mother's power provides. The system, designed to create perfect warriors through perfect women, begins producing neither. A girl named Siniska will soon do the unthinkable, enter her horses in the Olympics and win. Not competing herself. Women are barred from those games, but owning the winning team. Using wealth accumulated through the system to break the system's assumptions. First woman in history to claim Olympic victory. She'll dedicate her triumph to Spartan women's superiority. But superiority at what cost? Her victories come from wealth, built on institutionalized rape. Her power flows from a system that consumed countless women before granting survivors these bitter freedoms. Can liberation born from oppression ever taste sweet? The questions hang in air, growing thick with evening cook-fires. Somewhere, a girl counts days until her first competition. Somewhere, a woman faces the temple tomorrow. Somewhere, a widow calculates her new property's value. All trapped in the same machine. finding different ways to survive its grinding gears. Their strength was real. Their oppression was real. Both existed simultaneously, neither cancelling the other. They were victims who found ways to thrive, slaves who accumulated power, women whose bodies belonged to the state but whose minds carved out spaces of resistance. We're left wondering if oppression always contains seeds of its own destruction, if strength, even enslaved, eventually breaks chains, if women trained as warriors inevitably become warriors in ways their trainers never intended. The gymnasium stands empty now. Tomorrow it fills again with girls building bodies for others' purposes. But every muscle they develop serves double duty. Every skill they master has multiple uses. Every strength they gain might serve the state or might serve themselves. The Spartan system created the strongest women in Greece. It gave them power unimaginable elsewhere. It trained them for war while expecting only submission. It built contradictions into female flesh and wondered why those contradictions eventually tore the system apart. Their legacy confuses us still. Were they feminists finding freedom in oppression? Victims making the best of horror? Collaborators in their own subjugation? Heroes of resistance? All answers fit. None suffice. They were human beings navigating inhumane systems with whatever tools they could grasp. The girl Gorgo became a queen. She told the Persian ambassador that only Spartan women birth real men. She advised her husband to die gloriously at Thermopylae. She ruled while warriors fought. She accumulated power through the system that should have crushed her. She died wealthy, influential, and historically remembered. Was her life victory or tragedy? Both. Neither. Something more complicated than our categories allow. She was a woman who found power in powerlessness, wrote her name in history through a system designed to erase her, birthed sons for the machine while building wealth that would outlast it. The Temple of Artemis still stands, its purpose sanitized for tourists. The stones remember what scholars prefer to forget. Women dragged here for refusing motherhood, elite warriors performing sacred rape, crowds watching genetic enforcement disguised as religious duty. The price of saying no in a society that owned women's wombs. But those same stones witnessed other scenes. Women growing strong in the courtyard, girls learning their bodies could achieve wonders, grandmothers teaching survival through athletic metaphor, small victories carved from systematic oppression, humanity persisting where it shouldn't exist. As darkness finally claims the gymnasium, we're left with questions that echo through centuries. What happens when strength serves slavery? Can power exist without freedom? Do oppressive systems always create their own opposition? The Spartan women provide no clean answers, only complicated lives that resist simple categorization. Their bodies were controlled, but their minds found spaces. Their reproduction was mandated, but their property accumulated. Their submission was required, but their influence grew. They were contradictions incarnate, powerful slaves and enslaved powers, victims who thrived and thrivers who suffered. Tomorrow, the competitions resume. New girls will display their potential. New negotiations will trade female futures. New resistances will spark and be crushed or carefully channeled. The cycle continues until it can't, until the contradictions grow too heavy for even Spartan strength to bear. But what of the helots who suffered under this system? What of the slaves whose oppression enabled these partial freedoms? Their story runs parallel to the Spartan women's. Another tale of humans ground between millstones of state power. The whip cracks against bare flesh. 7 figures huddle in the corner of the granary, forbidden from looking at their overseer's face. These are the ones who feed Sparta, who grow its grain, who build its walls, who exist in the shadows between slave and free. They outnumber their masters 7-1. Morning brings the count. Every helot family must present itself for inspection, confirming no one fled during darkness. The Spartan youth conducting today's review can't be older than 20, fresh from his Krypteia perhaps, still drunk on the power of sanctioned murder. He moves down the line, bronze spear tip lifting chins, checking for defiance that would justify violence. An old woman stumbles slightly. Age and hunger make balance difficult. The spear butt finds her kidney before she fully rights herself. She collapses without sound, trained through decades not to cry out. Her family doesn't move to help. Movement draws attention, Attention brings death. The mathematics of oppression are simple here. 35,000 helots serve 5,000 Spartan citizens. Those numbers should terrify the masters. Instead, they've turned fear into policy, paranoia into systematic brutality that makes rebellion unthinkable. Almost. The counting finishes. Today's random victim gets selected through a process nobody understands. The overseer's finger points at a young man, strong from fieldwork, guilty of nothing but visibility. They drag him to the market square where his punishment will serve as morning entertainment. Public humiliation follows a script written in generations of degradation. First, they force wine down his throat. Not enough to kill, just enough to destroy dignity. Helots are forbidden alcohol, so their bodies reject it violently. He staggers, falls, vomits. Spartan children laugh and throw stones. His wife watches from the crowd, face carved from stone. She learned long ago that showing emotion marks you for the next selection. Their daughter, perhaps 8 years old, grips her mother's hand hard enough to leave marks. She's learning too. How to be invisible. How to swallow rage. How to survive. The drunk helot tries to stand. More wine gets poured. The cycle continues until consciousness abandons him. They'll leave him there until nightfall, covered in his own filth, a reminder of what helots are, what they must remain. Subhuman things that exist only for Spartan convenience. This is Tuesday. Wednesday will bring agricultural inspections. Thursday, someone will die for not meeting grain quotas. Friday's entertainment remains unscheduled, but entertainment will be found. The helots know their calendar is written in blood and humiliation. A Spartan matron passes through the square, her nose wrinkled at the display. She needs new servants for her household. The selection process resembles choosing livestock. She examines teeth, muscle tone, scars that suggest durability. One girl catches her eye. Young, strong, not yet broken. The negotiation is brief. Helots can't be sold. They belong to the state, but usage rights transfer readily. The girl's family receives nothing for losing her labor. The matron gains another set of hands to exploit. The girl herself has no voice in this transaction. She walks away without looking back. Looking back shows attachment. Attachment is weakness. Weakness kills. Inside Spartan households, helots become invisible furniture. They cook, clean, raise children who will grow to despise them. They sleep in corners, eat scraps, exist in spaces between human and tool. The lucky ones get ignored. The unlucky ones attract notice. A warrior returns home drunk from his mess hall. His helot servant moves too slowly, bringing water. The beating is casual, almost absent-minded, just enough violence to relieve frustration. Tomorrow the servant will move faster, bones reminding him of the price of delay. Children learn cruelty through example. A Spartan boy, perhaps 5, kicks the helot woman who nurses him. His mother watches approvingly. He's learning proper hierarchy. The woman doesn't flinch. She's been kicked by children before. She'll be kicked by children again. This is existence. The fields tell their own story. Helots work land they'll never own, growing food they'll barely taste. Every harvest gets divided precisely. This much for Spartan citizens. This much for the army. Whatever remains might feed the workers. If the year was good, if the masters feel generous, if the stars align. A man collapses in the barley rows. Exhaustion, malnutrition, age, who can say? His son tries to help him rise. The overseer's whip discourages compassion. Work continues around the fallen body. Later, after dark, they'll carry him away. During daylight, productivity matters more than life. The granaries fill with helot sweat and Spartan grain. Armed guards watch every handful measured. Stealing food brings death, but hunger makes thieves of saints. A child slips grain into her tunic. The guard pretends not to notice. Tomorrow, he'll be hungrier, less merciful. Today, something human flickers and dies. Night brings different terrors. Spartan youth hunt helots for sport and grades. The Krypteia turns murder into curriculum. Families huddle together, listening for footsteps that might bring death. Parents tell children stories in whispers, afraid their own culture might be overheard and punished. A young man speaks too loudly at the well. He mentions better times, before Sparta's domination. Old-timers shush him quickly, but damage is done. Someone heard. Someone always hears. By morning, his body decorates the crossroads. No trial, no explanation, just another reminder of the price of memory. The women face particular horrors. Spartan men take what they want from helot bodies. Resistance brings death. Compliance brings shame, and sometimes half-Spartan children who belong nowhere. These mixed offspring get treated worse than pure helots, living reminders of violence nobody discusses. Markets days showcase the system's calculated cruelty. Helots bring goods for sale but can't set prices, can't handle money directly, must accept whatever Spartans offer. A year's worth of pottery might trade for a handful of grain. Argument means accusation of rebellion. Accusation means death. The public beatings follow a schedule. Every new moon brings fresh violence. They line up helots who committed no crimes, whose only offence is existing. The whips crack in rhythm. This isn't punishment. It's maintenance. Regular brutality to prevent dangerous thoughts from forming. An elderly man remembers his grandfather's stories. When helots were Messenians, before Sparta's conquest. When they owned land, governed themselves, lived as humans. He shares these memories only with his grandson, late at night. Voices so quiet they barely disturb air. History becomes contraband, memory an act of rebellion. The boy listens with eyes that hold too much anger for his years. 7 helots for every Spartan. The math gnaws at him. If they all moved together, all struck at once. His grandfather sees the thought forming, crushes it with whispered warnings. Others tried. Others died. Their families died. Their neighbors died. Sparta knows how to multiply death until resistance seems like suicide. Religious ceremonies offer no comfort. Helots can't enter temples, can't make offerings. The gods themselves are denied to them. They practice their faith in secret, hidden rituals that blend old ways with new desperation, praying to anyone who might listen, anyone who might care. A pregnant woman hides her condition as long as possible. New helot babies mean new mouths to feed from portions that barely sustain current numbers, but they also mean new hands for labor, eventually, if the child survives. If the mother survives, birthing without medical care. If Spartan youth don't select the infant for entertainment. The harvest season brings its own arithmetic. Every bushel counted. Every discrepancy investigated. A family that fails to meet quota loses rations. Lose enough rations, and winter solves Sparta's population concerns naturally. Starvation as policy. Hunger as crowd control. Young helots learn trades from their elders. Pottery, weaving, metalwork. Skills passed down through generations. They create beauty that they'll never own, strength they'll never wield. Their finest works decorate Spartan homes, their names forgotten before the clay dries. A blacksmith forges spear points that might kill his own people. A weaver creates cloaks for warriors who whip her children. They work with steady hands, poisonous knowledge locked behind neutral faces. Every creation strengthens their oppressors. Every skill serves their own degradation. The communication network operates through whispers and signals. A specific way of stacking wood means danger. A pattern woven into cloth warns of Krypteia activity. They've developed a language of survival that exists beneath Spartan notice. Small victories in an ocean of defeat. Children play games that mirror their reality. They practice being invisible. Take turns being the overseer and the beaten. Learn to cry silently. Their childhood ends before it begins, crushed under the weight of inherited oppression. A woman gives birth in a field because labor waits for no one. Her sisters shield her from overseer eyes, pretend to work while she delivers life into bondage. The baby's first breath tastes of dust and desperation. Welcome to existence as property. The seasons cycle through predictable brutalities. Spring brings planting and exhaustion. Summer brings drought and starvation. Autumn brings harvest and punishment for insufficient yields. Winter brings cold and death for the weakest. The calendar of oppression never pauses. Young men feel the mathematics burning in their bones. 7-1. The numbers scream possibility. But their elders know better. They've seen rebellions crushed, watched participants flayed alive, witnessed entire families eliminated for one member's defiance. Experience teaches patience. Patience teaches survival. The market square fills again with morning's entertainment. Another random selection. Another public degradation. The chosen victim this time is barely 16, guilty of being young and strong and noticed. They force-feed him wine, while citizens cheer. His mother watches from the crowd, face empty, heart breaking behind stone features. A Spartan child, perhaps 10, throws the first stone. Others follow. The helot boy tries to dodge through his drunken haze. The crowd finds this hilarious. Someone trips him. More laughter. Blood mixes with wine and vomit. This is education. This is how you teach superiority. The boy survives this time. They usually do. Death ends the entertainment too quickly. He'll carry scars, visible and hidden. He'll flinch when Spartans pass. He'll dream of numbers. 7-1. But he'll wake to reality. He'll bow his head. He'll endure. Evening brings the count again. Ensure no one fled. Ensure all property remains accounted for. The helots line up, families together, awaiting judgment. Who will be tonight's example? Whose turn has come? The selection feels random but follows patterns. Strong young men who might lead, women who show pride, elders who remember too much. The overseer's finger points. A woman steps forward. Her crime might be anything. A glance too direct, work too slow, or nothing. Nothing but existing when violence needs expression. They'll beat her publicly, not to death. Death wastes resources, just enough to remind everyone of their place. Her husband doesn't move, can't move. Protection brings worse punishment. Her children don't cry, can't cry. Tears mark them for future attention. They watch their mother brutalized and learn the mathematics of powerlessness. One Spartan with a whip, 30 helots watching. No one acts. Everyone survives another day. The underground resistance exists in fragments. A tool hidden here, food cached there, knowledge preserved through whispered stories. They don't dream of successful rebellion. They dream of endurance, of outlasting, of Sparta choking on its own brutality eventually. Some helots gain trust through decades of perfect servitude. They enter households, 10 children, hear conversations. Information flows slowly, carefully. Which warriors are gone? Which defenses are weakened? Knowledge accumulates like drops of water that might someday become a flood. The Krypteia continues its harvest. Young Spartans hunt humans for grades, perfect their killing skills on helot bodies. Families wake to find members missing. No investigation, no justice. Just empty spaces and silent grief. The state declares war on its own property annually, making murder legal and systematic. A boy watches his father die at Spartan hands. He counts as they drag the body away. 1, 2, 3 Spartans, 20 helots in the square. 7-1 if you expand the view, but also 3 armed against 20 unarmed. The mathematics shift with perspective. Years pass. The boy grows, works fields, suffers beatings, watches others die. The numbers burn constant in his mind. 7-1. But also, he's seen what happens to those who act on arithmetic, seen families destroyed, entire communities punished for individual defiance. The system persists through calculated terror, not just violence but unpredictability. You can follow every rule and still be selected. Perfect servitude guarantees nothing. This randomness breaks spirits more thoroughly than consistent brutality would. Hope kills slower than whips. A grandmother whispers to her granddaughter, not stories of resistance, stories of endurance, how to be invisible, how to show submission while preserving self, how to survive when survival seems impossible. The girl listens with eyes already too old, learning the mathematics of oppression. 7-1 sounds like victory until you factor in weapons, training, organization, and the willingness to commit atrocities. Then it becomes 7 victims to 1 killer. The arithmetic of oppression includes more variables than simple numbers. The helots know this. They've always known. They count differently. Not days until rebellion, but days survived. Not enemies to overcome, but children to preserve. Not 7 to 1, but 1 day at a time. Their mathematics focuses on endurance rather than conquest. The boy from the morning's humiliation stumbles home. His family tends wounds without comment. Tomorrow brings new degradations. Next week another selection. Next month another death. The calendar stretches endless and repetitive. But still, they endure. Somewhere in hidden spaces, helots practice their faith. Remember their names. Speak their language. Pass down stories Sparta would erase. Tiny acts of defiance that keep identity alive under crushing oppression. Not rebellion but resistance. Not war but survival. The night grows deep. Families huddle together, listening for footsteps. Children learn to sleep light, ready to hide. Parents lie awake, calculating chances. Not of freedom, but of making it through another season. The mathematics of oppression allows no greater ambitions. 7 to 1. The numbers mock them, promise them, torture them. But numbers are only part of the equation. The rest is written in fear, systematized through generations, maintained by random terror that makes organization impossible. A young man feels the rage building, sees the numbers, knows the possibility. His father sees it too, remembers others who felt this way. They disappeared. Their families disappeared. Sometimes entire communities vanished for harboring such thoughts. The mathematics includes subtraction. The system grinds on. Helots labor. Spartans brutalize. The numbers remain constant. 7 to 1. But also 1 whip against empty hands. 1 sword against bent backs. 1 organized state against scattered suffering. The arithmetic tells different stories depending on how you count. Tomorrow brings new counts, new selections, new examples made. The helots will line up, submit, endure, survive, because the alternative isn't revolution but extinction. Sparta has proven repeatedly that it will murder its own economy before accepting helot humanity. The boy grown to man still counts, still sees 7 to 1, but now he also sees his children, sees his parents, sees the price of acting on arithmetic, so he bows, works, suffers, survives, adds another day to different calculations. The darkness hides tears and planning equally. Some helots dream of freedom, others of mere survival. Most just focus on tomorrow, on making it through another count, another selection, another day in the arithmetic of systematic oppression. 7 to 1. The numbers haven't changed in generations. Neither has the system that makes those numbers meaningless. Weapons, organization, and will to atrocity trump simple mathematics. The helots know this, have always known. But knowledge doesn't ease suffering. Understanding oppression doesn't lighten its weight. The counts continue, the beatings continue, the deaths continue, and still the helots endure, because endurance is all the arithmetic allows. The mathematics of oppression permits no miscalculation. 7 to 1 means nothing when the one holds all power and willingness to use it. The helots learned this lesson written in blood across generations. They survive by accepting the arithmetic, by not testing its truth. But even as they submit, the numbers gnaw at consciousness. 7 to 1. Someday, perhaps, the mathematics might shift. Someday the variables might change. Someday the arithmetic might add up differently. Until then, they count different things. Days survived, children preserved, culture maintained in whispers, identity hidden but not lost. The mathematics of endurance against the arithmetic of oppression. What would you choose faced with these numbers? Risk everything on arithmetic that promises victory through probability, or focus on smaller calculations that guarantee survival, if not freedom? 7 to 1 sounds like hope, until you factor in everything else. Then, it becomes just another number in the vast mathematics of systematic horror. But numbers, like systems built on terror, contain their own contradictions, and contradictions, given time, crack foundations. Bronze scrapes against bronze as 300 warriors lock shields. The phalanx moves as one organism, each man's survival dependent on holding formation. Break ranks, and everyone dies. Stay tight, and the machine grinds forward unstoppable. This is Spartan perfection in its purest form. The dust cloud rises 40 feet, marking their advance across the practice field. Veterans of countless battles drill beside boys fresh from the Agoge. All move with identical precision. Their feet strike earth in perfect synchronization, creating thunder that carries for miles. 20 years of preparation creates this moment. Every beating absorbed as children, every night of starvation endured, every friend watched dying during training, all of it built toward this singular purpose, becoming indistinguishable parts in a military mechanism. The commander barks an order. 300 bodies pivot left without thought. Individual decision-making died in the Agoge. These men operate through muscle memory and conditioned response. Their minds stay empty of everything except maintaining formation. An unexpected boulder appears in their path. In other armies, soldiers would flow around obstacles, adapt to terrain, think for themselves. Spartans march straight through. The front rank's shins shatter against stone. They fall. The next rank steps on their bodies without pause. The formation holds. This inflexibility is feature, not flaw, at least according to those who designed the system. Thinking soldiers hesitate. Questioning warriors create gaps. Sparta needs neither thought nor question. Only obedience crystallized into bone and sinew. The wounded men crawl from beneath trampling feet. Their legs hang at impossible angles. Tomorrow they'll be judged. Those who heal quickly might return to service. Those who don't face the same cliff that swallowed imperfect infants. Sparta wastes nothing on broken tools. Another drill begins. Attack patterns practiced 10,000 times. The spear thrust that targets the gap between breastplate and helmet. The shield bash that breaks enemy faces. The footwork that maintains formation while climbing over corpses. Every motion stripped of variation, personality, choice. A messenger arrives, sprinting across the field. Real combat summons them north. Some minor city refuses tribute. Time to demonstrate why Spartan military perfection terrifies all Greece. The men receive these orders with faces carved from stone. Excitement is emotion. Emotion is weakness. They march out at dawn. 300 identical warriors moving with mechanical precision. Their families watch from doorways. Wives who might take new lovers before they return. Mothers who train themselves not to grieve. Children who'll either see their fathers again or won't. The first day covers 20 miles. They camp without tents, exposed to mountain cold. Soft armies would complain, would huddle together for warmth. Spartans lie separately, maintaining formation even in sleep. The temperature hardens them further. Comfort corrupts warrior spirit. A scout reports the enemy numbers. 2,000 citizen soldiers, not professionals but merchants and farmers defending their homes. They have passion, desperation, the advantage of familiar terrain. The Spartans have none of these things. They have only their perfect mechanical violence. The mathematics should concern them. 7 enemies for each Spartan. But numbers mean nothing against conditioning. Those citizen soldiers will think during battle, will worry about wives and children, will feel fear when friends fall beside them. Spartans feel nothing, calculate nothing, simply execute trained responses. Dawn brings battle formations. The enemy arrays itself across a narrow valley, hoping terrain neutralizes Spartan advantages. Their plan shows thought, adaptation, intelligence. Everything the Agoge systematically destroyed in these bronze-clad automatons. The Spartans form their phalanx without speech. Each man knows his place through decades of practice. Shields lock, spears level. The machine prepares to function. No war cries, no boasts. No humanity to interfere with purpose. Contact comes with shocking violence. The enemy's front line evaporates against Spartan shields. Farmers meet professional killers. The results are predictable. Blood sprays in perfect arcs as spears find gaps with practiced ease. The phalanx advances over twitching bodies. But something unexpected happens. The enemy doesn't break. These aren't warriors, but they're defending homes, children, freedom. They throw themselves against bronze shields with desperate courage. Their passion fights Spartan perfection. A gap opens in the phalanx. One Spartan falls to a lucky thrust. The man beside him should shift to cover. Any thinking soldier would adapt. Instead, he maintains his trained position while enemies pour through the breach. Orders didn't include independent adjustment. The commander sees danger too late. His warriors can't respond to situations their training never covered. They know only forward advance in formation. The enemy, inferior in every military measure, found the flaw in perfection. They created chaos where Spartans needed order. More gaps opened. Spartan discipline holds even as tactical situation deteriorates. They die in formation rather than adapt. Their conditioning is so complete that survival instincts can't override trained responses. The perfect warriors can't handle imperfect warfare. A young Spartan, perhaps 19, watches enemies flank his position. Every instinct screams to face the threat. But turning means breaking formation. Breaking formation was beaten out of him at age 8. He dies with enemies at his back, maintaining position to the end. The battle becomes slaughter, not the usual kind where Spartans butcher inferior opponents. Instead, passionate amateurs tear apart the world's finest soldiers through simple unpredictability. The farmers fight without rules, without formation, without the patterns Spartans trained to counter. Half the Spartans fall before the commander permits retreat. Even then, they withdraw in formation, maintaining intervals while friends die around them. Their perfection has become a death trap, but they can't conceive of imperfection as option. The survivors report failure with emotionless precision. They describe tactical errors without admitting the strategic flaw. How can they? Their entire existence assumes Spartan methods represent warfare's pinnacle. Defeat must come from enemy luck, not systemic weakness. But the F4s understand what the warriors cannot. They've created soldiers so specialized they can't adapt. Warriors so perfect they shatter against imperfection. A military machine that functions brilliantly until any component fails. The recruiting grounds tell the larger story. Each year brings fewer children who survive selection. The standards that ensure perfection also guarantee scarcity. Sparta kills its imperfect infants, loses more boys in the Agoge, sends survivors through the Krypteia. The numbers dwindle steadily. A generation ago, Sparta could field 8,000 citizen warriors. Now barely 5,000 remain. The system that creates perfect soldiers also destroys the population needed to sustain them. Mathematical extinction disguised as military excellence. The training intensifies in response. If numbers decline, quality must increase. Boys face harsher trials. More die before reaching warrior status. The survivors are indeed superior to previous generations. Also, fewer. Always fewer. Women bear the reproductive burden of this failing system. Expected to produce sons for an increasingly lethal training regime. They birth children knowing most won't survive to adulthood. Those who do will be transformed into the same inflexible killing machines now dying in formation. The social structure calcifies around military demands. Every citizen exists to support the war machine. Farmers are helots, not citizens. Merchants are foreigners, not Spartans. Only warriors and warrior producers matter. The society narrows its focus until it can see nothing else. Trade declines. Who needs commerce when you can take through conquest? Art disappears. What purpose does beauty serve in barracks? Philosophy withers. Why think when orders suffice? Sparta perfects itself into cultural sterility. Neighboring cities once feared Spartan military might. Now, they pity the hollow state. Athens produces playwrights and philosophers. Corinth grows rich through trade. Even tiny Thebes experiments with new military tactics. Sparta produces only soldiers, and fewer each year. The Agoge continues its brutal curriculum. Boys still freeze on winter nights, still fight over scraps, still learn to kill without conscience. But the world outside changes, while Sparta remains frozen in its own perfectionist amber. A Theban general studies Spartan tactics, not to copy but to counter. He notices their inability to adapt, their dependence on formation, their psychological brittleness hidden beneath physical hardness. He develops something new, something flexible, The sacred band of Thebes trains differently. These elite warriors fight in pairs, lovers defending each other. They have everything Sparta forbids: emotional bonds, individual initiative, tactical flexibility, human connections that inspire beyond mere conditioning. When they meet Spartan forces, the results shock Greece. The perfect phalanx breaks against warriors who fight for love rather than from emptiness, who adapt rather than merely execute, who think as well as kill. Spartan casualties mount, not from inferior training but from superior humanity. The emotionless killers can't match warriors with reasons to live. The perfect formation shatters against imperfect but inspired resistance. Back in Sparta, the ephors respond predictably. More discipline, harsher training, higher standards. They can't conceive that perfection itself is the flaw, that humans need more than conditioning to excel, that the strength they've built is also brittleness. Young Spartans march to battle with mechanical precision. They die with the same empty efficiency. Their perfection makes them predictable. Their training makes them inflexible. Their dehumanization makes them ultimately defeatable. The birth rate continues dropping. Why produce sons for guaranteed suffering? Women space pregnancies further apart. Use herbal preventives. Some risk the temple punishment rather than feed more children to the machine. The population pyramid inverts. Foreign observers note the irony. Sparta created history's finest individual warriors but can't win wars, produced perfect soldiers who fail at imperfect reality, built a system so specialized it can't survive generalization. The Agoge churns out its final generations. Each year, fewer boys enter, fewer still emerge. Those who do are indeed perfect specimens of what Sparta values, also useless for any purpose beyond formation fighting. Human weapons that break against human unpredictability. A veteran sits in the mess hall, 45 years old and ancient by warrior standards. He's survived 3 decades of combat through perfect adherence to training. He's never had an original thought, never questioned orders, never adapted tactics. He is exactly what Sparta wanted. Around him sit 24 others. Once this hall held hundreds. The empty spaces tell their own story. Perfection is expensive. Excellence through brutalization carries compound interest. The bill comes due in empty tables and silent barracks. He watches young warriors train in the courtyard. Their formation is flawless. Their responses automatic. Their humanity absent. They're superior to his generation in every measurable way. Also fewer. Always fewer. Tomorrow they march against Thebes again. They'll form perfect phalanxes, execute flawless maneuvers, die in geometrically precise formations. The enemy will fight chaotically, emotionally, adaptively. The outcome is predictable. The contradiction strangles logic. Sparta knows only one solution to problems: more intensity. Failures come from insufficient perfection. Defeats mean training wasn't harsh enough. The cure for systematic flaws is always more system. A boy in the Agoge practices spear thrusts. His form is perfect. His mind is empty. His future is written in the diminishing numbers around him. He'll become an exemplary warrior in a dying system. A perfect soldier in an imperfect world. The helots watch from the edges. They see the mathematics shifting. Fewer warriors each year. More dependence on brutality over numbers. The 7-to-1 ratio grows more extreme. Still, they wait. Survival requires patience. Foreign military innovations spread across Greece. Combined arms, cavalry tactics, siege weapons, flexible formations. Sparta ignores them all. Perfection needs no improvement. The phalanx is eternal. Until it isn't. The perfect warrior paradox reaches its conclusion through simple arithmetic. You can't breed soldiers from soldiers indefinitely. Can't sustain population through brutalization. Can't maintain society focused solely on one specialized function. Other cities build walls, develop navies, create economic alliances. Sparta builds only warriors. When those warriors fail, it has nothing else. No adaptability, no alternatives, no future beyond the next perfect phalanx. The system grinds toward its inevitable end. Each generation smaller but more specialized. Each warrior more perfect but less human. Each victory more difficult. each defeat more devastating, the machine consuming itself through its own excellence. A messenger brings news from the northern frontier. Another Spartan force surrounded. Another perfect formation shattered by imperfect enemies. Another set of conditioned killers dead because they couldn't think beyond their training. The E4s meet in council. They discuss solutions that aren't solutions. More selection pressure, harsher training, earlier separation from families, higher standards. Everything except questioning the standards themselves. Outside, boys practice formations they'll die maintaining. Women birth sons for a system killing itself through perfectionism. Helots work fields that feed fewer warriors each season. The mathematics of collapse disguised as discipline. What happens when you create perfect warriors? They win battles until battles change. They dominate through formation until enemies learn fluidity. They terrify through reputation until reputation meets reality. Then they die, perfectly. The Spartan system achieved its goal completely. It manufactured history's most disciplined soldiers, produced humans transformed into weapons, created warriors without weakness, also without flexibility, without imagination, without the humanity that makes survival possible. In pursuing perfection, they achieved extinction. The empty barracks and silent training grounds await their final residents, the last perfect warriors preparing for their last perfect defeat, the machine grinding to its engineered halt. But the consequences of Spartan ideology would outlive Sparta itself. The dream of creating perfect citizens through systematic brutality would hibernate through centuries, waiting for new disciples to resurrect its horrors. The flickering lamplight catches on papyrus, as ancient fingers trace words across the page. Plato sits in his Athenian study, transforming blood into philosophy, turning systematic brutality into abstract ideals. What his eyes witnessed in Sparta becomes something else entirely through the alchemy of distance and intellect. His pen moves with careful precision, describing warrior philosophers who exist nowhere but in his imagination. The boys he saw beaten into submission become noble guardians in his republic. The women forced to breed warriors transform into equal partners in governance. The systematic murder of infants becomes selective cultivation of virtue. 3 scrolls already fill with his improvements on Spartan reality. Where he observed mindless obedience, he writes of wisdom-loving rulers. Where children died from manufactured starvation, he describes moderate hardship-building character. The Krypteia's human hunts vanish entirely, replaced by tests of moral courage. A wealthy student enters, eager for wisdom. He's read Plato's earlier work, dreams of this perfected state, where philosophers rule and justice prevails. His eyes shine with idealism as he asks about implementing these concepts. He wants to build Plato's republic, never knowing it's founded on Sparta's bones. The transformation continues through each carefully chosen word. Plato remembers the empty eyes of Agoge survivors, but writes of spiritual enlightenment through discipline. He recalls mother's tears at separation, but describes it as necessary sacrifice for communal good. Every horror gets filtered through intellectual distance until it emerges clean, theoretical, bloodless. Years pass in Athens while Plato's writings spread across the Mediterranean. Educated Romans devour his republic, seeing blueprint rather than warning. They admire the rigid class structure, the state control of reproduction, the subordination of individual to collective. They miss entirely that Plato was sanitizing atrocity, not advocating it. A Roman senator quotes Plato during debates about citizen virtue. He's never been to Sparta, never seen the reality behind the philosophy. To him, these ideas exist purely as concepts, divorced from the broken children and empty barracks. He advocates for Roman youth to embrace Spartan discipline, meaning Plato's version, not the truth. The manuscripts multiply through centuries of copying. Each scribe adds their own interpretations, their own distance from reality. Sparta becomes myth, becomes philosophy, becomes inspiration. The blood washes away through layers of abstraction until only pure ideas remain. Medieval monks discover Plato in dusty libraries. They see Christian virtue in his emphasis on spiritual over physical, never realizing they're reading sanitized paganism. The Republic becomes guide for monastic discipline. Brothers wake at midnight for prayers, eat simple food, subordinate desires to community. They think they're following divine wisdom, not echoes of Spartan brutality filtered through Greek philosophy. The Renaissance arrives with its hunger for classical knowledge. Scholars unearth every fragment of Plato, treating his words as gospel of rational governance. They establish academies modelled on his philosophical schools, never knowing these trace back to barracks where children learned through starvation. Machiavelli reads Plato alongside Plutarch's Lives of Spartans. He sees the connection others miss, recognizes the brutality beneath philosophy's veneer, but rather than recoil, he embraces it. His prince advocates for necessary cruelty, for the ruler who inspires fear over love. He strips away Plato's prettifying language, revealing the mechanical power beneath. A Florentine prince implements Machiavelli's advice, which derives from Plato's Republic, which sanitized Spartan horror. Each iteration moves further from source while maintaining the essential poison, that humans can be perfected through systematic control, that the state matters more than souls, that brutality becomes virtue if properly rationalized. The printing press spreads these ideas faster than ever before. What took centuries now happens in decades. Plato's Republic appears in every European language. University students debate its merits. Political theorists mine it for insights. All the while, the original Spartan reality fades further into myth. Thomas More reads Plato while composing Utopia. He imagines an island of perfect citizens, living in harmony through rigid control. Children raised communally, property abolished, conformity enforced through social pressure. He thinks he's improving on Plato, who thought he was improving on Sparta. Each iteration makes the poison sweeter. The Enlightenment brings new readers to old texts. Rousseau discovers Sparta through Plutarch and Plato simultaneously. He sees noble savages corrupted by civilization, missing entirely that Spartan nobility came through systematic dehumanization. His writings inspire revolution, promising to create citizens as virtuous as ancient warriors. French revolutionaries quote Rousseau quoting Plato sanitizing Sparta. They establish committees of public safety that monitor citizen virtue. They create new calendars to control time itself. They execute those who fail revolutionary purity. The distance from Agoge to guillotine seems vast, but runs straight through philosophy's laundering. A young German student reads Plato in university. Friedrich Nietzsche sees through some veils, recognizes the violence beneath virtue, but rather than reject it, he celebrates the will to power, the creation of supermen through struggle. His notebooks fill with admiration for Spartan hardness, though he knows it only through philosophical distance. The ideas metastasize through European intellectual circles. Each philosopher adds their interpretation, their distance, their abstraction. Sparta becomes symbol rather than reality. Its brutality transforms into necessary hardship. Its systematic child abuse becomes character building. Its racial ideology becomes selective breeding for excellence. 20th century arrives with mechanized horror. Engineers of genocide read philosophical justifications in classical texts. They quote Plato on guardian classes, reference Spartan elimination of the weak, cite philosophical precedent for treating humans as breeding stock. The abstractions become concrete again, but magnified through industrial efficiency. A scholar in 1920s Germany writes dissertations on Spartan racial purity. He's never studied the actual archaeological evidence, only the philosophical interpretations. Plato's Republic sits on his shelf beside treatises on eugenics. The connection seems natural to him, ancient wisdom supporting modern science. The ideas spread through academic conferences, scholarly journals, university lectures. Each iteration adds respectability, distance, abstraction. Young minds absorb the poison thinking it's medicine. They learn about necessary hardship, useful struggle, the subordination of individual to state, all wrapped in philosophical language that obscures the originated horror. Politicians discover these scholarly works. They see justification for programs they already desire. Forced sterilization finds precedent in Spartan infant selection. Youth indoctrination programs reference Agoge training. Racial ideology claims classical foundation. Plato's name lends authority to atrocity. The wheel comes full circle as modern states create their own versions of the Agoge, youth organizations that separate children from parents, training camps that build ideology through hardship, selection processes that eliminate the different, all justified through philosophical precedent that began with Plato's washings of Spartan blood. A professor lectures on political philosophy today. She teaches Plato's Republic as foundational text, discussing its influence on Western thought. Her students take notes on ideal states and philosopher kings. The syllabus includes no mention of Spartan reality. The washing is so complete that even educators don't see the stains. The books multiply on library shelves. Each new translation, each fresh interpretation adds another layer between readers and reality. Sparta exists now only as idea. Its brutality survives as philosophy. Its horrors live on as inspiration for those who would perfect humanity through control. Modern think tanks quote classical philosophy while designing policy. They reference Platonic ideals while advocating for educational reform. They speak of producing better citizens through proper training. The language sounds reasonable, academic, bloodless. The distance from Agoge to modern classroom seems infinite, but operates on identical principles. Students graduate with heads full of philosophical ideals, never knowing their intellectual heritage traces to children beaten on cold stones. They enter government, education, social planning. They implement policies based on ideas they think are pure, rational, beneficial. The laundering is so thorough they can't see the blood. Contemporary debates about human perfectibility inevitably reference classical sources. Bioethicists cite Plato when discussing genetic enhancement. Educational theorists point to Spartan discipline when advocating for stricter standards. The philosophy provides cover for impulses that would horrify if stated plainly. The internet accelerates this philosophical laundering. Ideas spread instantly. Context disappears immediately. Someone quotes Plato on Twitter. Another shares inspiring Spartan sayings. The brutality behind the words vanishes in the speed of transmission. Each share adds distance. Each like sanitizes further. Online communities form around classical philosophy. They discuss virtue ethics and political theory. They debate interpretations of Republic passages. They imagine implementing these ideas in modern contexts. None pause to trace the genealogy of concepts they so admire. A startup founder reads Plato for leadership insights. He implements guardian culture in his company. Employees undergo intensive training. Weak performers face elimination. The language comes from philosophy books, but the impulse is older. Create perfect workers through systematic pressure. The ideas hide in plain sight throughout our discourse. When we speak of meritocracy, we echo Plato's guardian class. When we advocate for standardized testing to sort students, we follow philosophical precedent. When we discuss necessary hardship-building character, we repeat sanitized brutality. Each generation rediscovers these texts anew. Each reads through their own context, adds their own distance. The original horror becomes increasingly theoretical. Sparta transforms from historical reality to philosophical metaphor to practical inspiration. The blood never fully washes out, just becomes invisible. A graduate student writes her thesis on educational philosophy. She critiques modern schooling through Platonic lens. Her proposals for reform include increased discipline, standardized curriculum, separation of high performers. She thinks she's progressive. She can't see she's advocating for philosophical Agoge. The cycle continues endlessly. Philosophers sanitize horror into theory. Theorists transform theory into policy. Policymakers implement without understanding origins. Citizens suffer consequences of ideas they can't trace. The machinery of philosophical laundering operates smoothly, efficiently, invisibly. Books pile upon books in endless libraries. Each adds interpretation, distance, abstraction. The original Spartan brutality becomes footnote, becomes myth, becomes inspiration. Scholars build careers analyzing texts that began as witness to atrocity. The washing is so complete that questioning it seems absurd. Modern movements claim classical heritage without irony. They speak of returning to ancient wisdom. They advocate for traditional values. They quote philosophers who quoted historians who witnessed horror. Each iteration of distance makes the poison seem like medicine. The final washing comes through time itself. Centuries create their own abstraction. What happened becomes what was written, becomes what was interpreted, becomes what we believe. Sparta exists now only as idea, its reality buried under philosophical sediment. We consume these ideas daily without recognition. When politicians speak of citizen virtue, when educators discuss character building, when parents advocate for strict discipline, they channel philosophical traditions they don't fully understand. The language seems reasonable because the blood dried centuries ago. A child enters kindergarten designed around pedagogical theories tracing to philosophical interpretations of Spartan brutality. She doesn't know this. Her teachers don't know this. The administrators who designed the curriculum don't know this. The washing is complete. The ideas live on, cleaned of their horror, ready to inspire new generations of refined brutality. Tomorrow's philosophers will read today's interpretations of yesterday's sanitizing of ancient atrocity. They'll add their own distance, their own abstractions. They'll find new applications for old ideas. The cycle continues, perfect in its ability to transform blood into wisdom, horror into philosophy, brutality into inspiration. But the blood remains, invisible but present, in every philosophical system that values perfection over humanity, state over individual, idea over life. Plato's pen washed it from sight, but not from consequence. The ideas live on, poisoning each generation that mistakes philosophical abstraction for wisdom. The lamplight fades in modern libraries as students close their philosophy texts. They've learned about justice, virtue, the good life. They've absorbed ideas cleaned by centuries of intellectual distance. Tomorrow they'll apply these concepts, never knowing they're implementing echoes of systematized horror, professionally laundered through history's most successful philosophical washing. What happens when brutality becomes philosophy? It spreads, it inspires, it reproduces itself through generations of thinkers who mistake distance for wisdom. And somewhere, in policies and pedagogies and political systems, the original horror lives on, transformed beyond recognition but perfectly preserved in its essential cruelty. The washing is complete, the blood invisible, the ideas eternal. And tomorrow, another student opens Plato's Republic, ready to discover wisdom where horror once lived. The barracks stand empty now. Dust settles on stone floors where thousands once slept. Mountain wind whistles through gaps that no longer need to admit cold for hardening young bodies. The Agoge's final class graduated 3 summers ago. 20 boys entered. 4 emerged. None have returned to fill these halls with new recruits. Outside, weeds push through the training ground. The running track disappears beneath wild grasses. Posts where boys once hung for whippings rot untended. Nature reclaims what systematic brutality built, and no one stops her. No one remains who could. The E4s meet in a chamber designed for 40 voices. 5 old men fill less than a corner. Their discussion circles the same impossible mathematics. 800 warriors left in all Sparta, most past 40. The youngest approaching 30, with no generation rising behind them. Maps cover their table, marking territories once controlled through fear. Now those borders exist only in memory. Athens sends no tribute. Thebes ignores demands. Even tiny villages that once trembled at Spartan approach now trade freely, farm peacefully, plan futures without considering what the warriors might do. Because the warriors can do nothing. The birth rate statistics make grim reading. 7 years since a male child survived past inspection. The few born arrive weak from mothers too old, too exhausted, too broken by previous losses. The inspection standards haven't loosened. Perfection still demands its price. The price now exceeds what biology can pay. Commander Alexios tours the empty Agoge monthly. Habit more than hope drives these visits. He counts vacant sleeping spaces. 300 boys once filled this hall. The silence presses against his ears like physical weight. His footsteps echo in spaces meant for young voices he'll never hear again. The kitchen stores no food. Why stock provisions for students who don't exist? The massive pots that once held thin gruel for hundreds gather dust and spiderwebs. Rats nest in corners where boys once fought over scraps. The transformation from place of transformation to tomb happened gradually, then suddenly. He remembers his own time here, 43 years ago, arriving terrified at 7. The cold, the hunger, the systematic breaking down of everything soft. 200 entered with him. 30 survived to earn their red cloaks. Now he commands the remnants of a system that consumed itself through excellence. The weapons training ground tells its own story of decline. Practice spears lean forgotten against walls. No young hands grip them daily, wearing wood smooth through repetition. The bronze points have gone green with verdigris. Some have fallen, lie scattered like bones after a feast. No one bothers collecting them. A merchant from Corinth visits, seeking trade agreements. He walks streets that once thundered with marching warriors. Now he counts more helots than citizens. They still bow, still scurry aside from habit, but their eyes hold knowledge. The mathematics have finally shifted. 7 to 1 has become 70 to 1, and dropping. The merchant finds no one authorized to negotiate. The ephors argue over who holds what authority in a state designed for thousands but containing hundreds. The elaborate governance structure assumes numbers they no longer possess. Positions stand vacant. Responsibilities overlap and conflict. The machinery of state grinds against its own emptiness. In the women's quarters, similar devastation spreads. The gymnasium where girls once trained stands silent. No young bodies building strength for breeding. The youngest Spartan woman passed 40 last winter. Their wombs, source of warriors, have aged beyond utility. The system that demanded their fertility now reaps barren consequence. These women gather in small groups, discussing what cannot be discussed. The end. It approaches with mathematical certainty. No births means no future. They've spent lives producing sons for a machine that devoured what it created. Now the machine starves, and they feel relief mixed with existential terror. A few suggest accepting foreign brides. The words hang in air like blasphemy. Spartan blood diluted, the purity that justified everything, abandoned. The proposal dies unspoken. Better to end than bend. The ideology that created this extinction forbids its own solution. The helot population watches and waits. Generations of brutal suppression taught patience. They need not rebel. Time fights their battle now. Every season brings fewer masters. Every year shifts the ratio further. They farm the same fields, tend the same houses, but the weight on their shoulders lightens with each empty Spartan home. Some helots have stopped bowing entirely. No punishment comes. Who would administer it? The remaining warriors patrol territories they can't possibly control. The young men who once hunted helots for sport during Krypteia exist only in memory. The system of terror requires terrorists. Sparta ran out. The treasury empties as surely as the barracks. No new conquests bring wealth. Existing territories stop sending tribute. The economic model assumed military dominance. Without warriors to enforce collection, the gold stops flowing. Without gold to maintain systems, the infrastructure crumbles. Each failure accelerates others. A warrior returns from patrolling the northern border. He reports settlements that once paid tribute now laugh at Spartan demands. They know the numbers. Everyone knows the numbers. 800 old men cannot threaten thousands. The reputation that once conquered through fear alone has met numerical reality. In council, someone finally speaks the unspeakable. Perhaps they could modify the Agoge, make it less lethal, allow more boys to survive. The silence that follows carries the weight of centuries. Everything Sparta is comes from that brutal selection. Soften it. And are they still Spartan? The question has only one answer they can accept. The youngest warrior is 28. He survived an Agoge class where 37 of 40 died. He represents perfection, as Sparta defines it. Also extinction. No amount of individual excellence compensates for numerical absence. He trains daily in empty grounds, maintaining skills that will never face real tests. Archaeological evidence from this period grows thin. A civilization collapsing leaves fewer traces than one thriving. The workshops that produced weapons close one by one. The records that tracked births and deaths trail into silence. Even grave markers become scarce. The dead outnumber the living who might bury them properly. Foreign observers document the decline with fascination and horror. They describe streets where houses stand empty, markets where few vendors serve fewer customers, temples where prayers echo unanswered. The Sparta that terrified Greece for centuries fades like morning mist, leaving only reputation and ruins. A delegation from Athens arrives, officially to negotiate treaties. Privately, they come to witness the end of their ancient enemy. They walk through the Agoge, noting its emptiness. They count warriors in the training ground. They understand what Spartans cannot admit. The future has already arrived. It contains no Sparta. The Athenians offer alliance, even integration. Spartan citizens could join the Athenian democracy. Their military expertise would be valued. Their children could grow without the Agoge's brutal selection. It's a lifeline disguised as diplomacy. The ephors refuse without discussion. Sparta dies, Spartan, or becomes nothing. This pride accelerates the mathematical certainty. Other dying cities might adapt, accept dilution for survival. Sparta's ideology forbids compromise. They created a system so pure it cannot bend. It must break completely or continue unchanged. Since continuation is numerically impossible, breaking becomes destiny. The last wedding in Sparta happens without ceremony. A warrior of 35 takes a wife of 38. Both understand the futility. Her womb has passed its fertile years. His seed meets barren ground. They marry from habit, following customs that assumed futures they cannot create. Their union produces only shared solitude. Commander Alexios makes his final inspection of the Agoge. He's 60 now, ancient by warrior standards. His joints protest movements that training made automatic. He walks halls where he learned to be inhuman. Every corner holds memory. Every stone speaks of boys who didn't survive to share his grey hairs. The inspection ends at the infant examination room. The table where newborns face judgment sits exactly as left, waiting for babies who will never come. The measuring rods gather dust. The scales show rust. The system perfected for selecting excellence waits eternally for subjects that biology can no longer provide. A runner brings word from the southern settlements. Another territory declares independence. No warriors march to reclaim it. The runner is helot, carrying messages between masters who grow fewer each season. He bows from habit, but his eyes hold tomorrow's knowledge. Soon there will be no one left to bow to. The remaining Spartans understand but cannot articulate their situation. Admitting failure would betray everything they suffered to become. They are perfect warriors in a world that no longer needs their perfection. Living artifacts of a system that achieved its goal so completely it erased its own existence. The women meet again, voices lower this time. One suggests something unthinkable. Leave Sparta, find foreign husbands, bear children who might live without the Agoge's hunger. Become mothers instead of warrior producers. The silence stretches long before someone speaks. Then we wouldn't be Spartan, as if that settles everything. It does settle everything. They'd rather cease existing than exist as something else. The ideology that shaped them allows no alternative identity. They are Spartan women or they are nothing. Since being Spartan women means childlessness in empty houses, they choose that familiar nothing over unknown something. A season passes. The numbers drop to 600 warriors. Natural death claims what battle no longer can. Hearts that survived decades of combat fail in empty barracks. Bodies that endured impossible training wear out with no one to replace them. Each funeral shrinks the survivor circle. The helots now outnumber Spartans 100 to 1. The mathematics scream revolution. Yet no uprising comes. Why fight the dying? Why risk everything against an enemy defeating itself? They continue their servitude with patience that spans generations. Freedom approaches on demographic feet. The market square where helots once faced ritual humiliation stands empty most days. No one maintains the pretense of control through terror. The wine forced down throats, the public beatings, the random executions, all these stopped when too few remained to administer them. The apparatus of oppression rusts unused. Young helot men walk more boldly now. They meet eyes when Spartans pass. They speak in normal voices, not whispers. They plan futures that extend beyond next season's survival. Some even cease the ritual bowing, testing boundaries that exist now only in memory and habit. The ephors issue edicts no one enforces. They declare policies for territories no longer controlled. They assign positions in hierarchies that exist only on papyrus. The government continues its functions with perfect form, ignoring that substance vanished years ago. Ritual without reality, continuing because stopping would acknowledge the end. A trader brings news from across Greece. Other cities flourish. Athens builds new temples. Corinth's merchant fleet expands. Thebes experiments with democracy. The world moves forward while Sparta stands frozen, a perfectly preserved corpse maintaining poses of life. The last attempt at military campaign becomes farce. 50 warriors march to reclaim a rebellious village. The villagers meet them with laughter, not fear. Old men in bronze armor demanding tribute from a population that could overwhelm them by sheer numbers. The warriors return without fighting. Even they understand the absurdity. In the royal archives, scribes maintain records with diminishing purpose. They track bloodlines that will produce no more children. They document military victories that grow ancient while defeats stay fresh. They preserve the ideology in written form, as if words could substitute for the reality bleeding away outside. The youngest Spartan turns 30. No one younger exists to carry forward their traditions. The Agoge's careful brutality created warriors by destroying children. Now, no children remain to destroy. The system perfected itself into extinction, achieving everything except continuance. A philosopher from Athens visits, drawn by morbid curiosity. He expects to find tragedy but discovers something worse. Spartans who cannot see their condition, who maintain rigid customs in empty halls, who speak of future campaigns with no soldiers to fight them. Denial so complete it transcends delusion into existential art. The women gather one last time, 24 where once hundreds met. They perform athletic competitions with bodies past breeding years. They maintain strength that serves no purpose. They are perfect Spartan women in a Sparta that needed them only for wombs now barren. Their excellence mocks its own existence. As autumn arrives, the numbers tell final truths. 400 warriors. No children. No pregnancies. The mathematical endpoint approaches with seasonal certainty. Some cities might take centuries to fade. Sparta's specialized nature allows no such gentle decline. When warriors can no longer be produced, nothing remains. The last Spartan baby would have been born 7 years ago, if any had passed inspection. None did. The standards that ensured excellence also ensured extinction. The final children, thrown from Mount Taygetos, took Sparta's future with them into the chasm. Perfection and death, united in infant bones. Commander Alexios dies in winter. The cold he once endured finally claiming victory. They burn him with full honours, though few remain to witness. His pyre illuminates empty streets. The smoke carries away another fraction of what Sparta was. Soon only ashes will remember the warriors. Spring brings no renewal. The training grounds grow wilder. Buildings begin their slow collapse without maintenance. The helots continue working, but for themselves now more than masters. They plant crops they'll harvest. They repair homes they'll inhabit. They prepare for after. A messenger arrives from Macedon. Philip offers to preserve Spartan military traditions within his army, train his soldiers in their methods, maintain their legacy through adaptation. The 3 remaining ephors don't even respond. Sparta's methods cannot be separated from Sparta itself. They'd rather die pure than live diluted. The irony escapes no one except the Spartans themselves. Every other Greek city they terrorized survives and thrives. Athens produces art and philosophy. Corinth grows rich through trade. Even tiny villages they once destroyed rebuild and flourish. Only Sparta, perfect in its warrior creation, faces extinction. The helot observation sharpens as numbers dwindle. 300 Spartans remain. 200. Each death shifts ratios further. They've waited centuries for this moment. Not through rebellion, but through patience. The mathematics they've always known finally manifest. 7 to 1 became 70 to 1, becomes infinity to 0. The last Spartan woman dies unmourned. She represented everything the system created and constrained. Strong beyond measure, capable beyond compare. Reduced to breeding stock in a system that ultimately made breeding impossible, her death eliminates half of Sparta's essential equation. Without women to birth warriors, no warriors can exist. Foreign visitors stop coming. Nothing remains worth seeing. Empty barracks impress no one. Abandoned training grounds inspire nothing. The reputation that once brought observers seeking military secrets meets reality of ruins. Sparta becomes cautionary tale, told in other cities' schools. The annual war declaration against helots passes with no one to declare it. That legal fiction that permitted systematic murder requires declarers and murderers. Both categories approach empty sets. The helots work fields without fear for the first time in centuries. The system of terror lacks both systematizers and terrorizers. 100 warriors gather in the assembly. They vote on matters affecting no one, pass laws enforcing nothing, maintain precedents preceding oblivion. The machinery of government continues through momentum alone, gears grinding without purpose or power, perfect form conserving nothing. The youngest survivor reaches 45, middle-aged by any standard, ancient for Spartan warriors. He trains alone in dusty grounds, practices formations requiring hundreds, maintains excellence that context has rendered meaningless. He is everything Sparta wanted, also why Sparta dies. Weeds claim the Agoge completely, roofs collapse unrepaired. The stones where boys once froze crack under seasonal pressures. Nature proves more patient than even helot endurance. She dismantles what brutality built, seed by seed, season by season. The systematic becomes systematically undone. The final count comes without ceremony. 50 warriors, no women, no children, no future. The mathematical endpoint achieved through perfect adherence to imperfect ideology. They created the greatest warriors in history by destroying everything necessary to continue creating them. A last embassy arrives from Thebes. They offer citizenship, integration, survival. The remaining Spartans refuse as expected. They'll die as they lived, purely what they were made to be. The embassy leaves them to their chosen extinction. There's nobility in it, perhaps, also stupidity. The two intertwine inseparably. The helots inherit by default. No revolution necessary, no violence required, just patience extending across centuries, until mathematics completed what courage could never attempt. They walk into empty Spartan homes, claim abandoned fields, take what patience earned and oppression relinquished. 40 warriors meet in assembly. They speak of past glories, plan impossible futures, ignore present reality. Their words echo in chambers built for hundreds. Each voice grows thinner against stone that remembers thousands. They are perfect echoes of what Sparta was, growing fainter with each iteration. The end approaches with individual deaths, not grand catastrophe. One warrior's heart fails. Another's wounds from ancient battles finally claim victory. Each death subtracts from an already impossible equation. The countdown continues with biological certainty. 20 remain, then 10, then 5. Each knows they witness not just personal ending but civilizational extinction. Everything they suffered to become dies with them. Every brutal lesson learned in the Agoge vanishes. Every principle defended through murder evaporates. They are living museums of discontinued atrocity. The last Spartan warrior sits alone in the empty assembly. He is perfection incarnate, everything the Agoge designed, stronger than any enemy, disciplined beyond human norms, willing to kill without conscience, ready to die without fear, also the only one left. Perfection achieved, purpose eliminated. He speaks to empty stones about honor, duty, the Spartan way. His voice carries nowhere. No one remains to hear or answer. The ideology that created him allows no adaptation, no compromise, no survival through change. He embodies everything Sparta valued. Therefore, he embodies extinction. The helots find his body 3 days later. They bury it without ceremony in ground that holds thousands of their own murdered across centuries. No marker distinguishes this grave. The last Spartan joins anonymous ranks of those the system consumed. perfection and victim united in unmarked earth. Silence claims the city. Not peaceful silence, but the empty echo of spaces built for purposes no longer served. The barracks stand vacant. The training grounds grow wild. The assembly hears no voices. Sparta exists now only as architecture awaiting collapse. Traders passing through report the emptiness to other cities. The news spreads without surprise. Everyone saw this coming except those living it. The mathematical certainty played out exactly as predicted. A system that creates warriors by destroying everything else eventually runs out of everything else. Philosophers debate lessons learned. How perfect systems contain imperfect assumptions. Why strength without flexibility becomes brittleness. The way ideology can blind adherents to obvious endpoints. Sparta becomes classroom example of excellence, achieving extinction. The helots rename their city. They govern themselves for the first time in centuries. Their children grow without fear of midnight raids. Their harvests feed their own families. They remember oppression but build beyond it. Life continues where death perfected itself into absence. Archaeologists will find the ruins, document the empty Agoge, measure the abandoned barracks, trace the outline of systematic brutality in stone and silence. They'll theorize about the end, count the demographics, calculate the timeline, miss nothing important, because the evidence surrounds them. A civilization that chose death over change, that perfected its values into non-existence, that created the ultimate warriors by destroying everything warriors protect. The contradiction manifests in empty buildings that once echoed with children's screams. Tourists walk these grounds. Guides explain the warrior culture. Visitors buy replicas of weapons never wielded by the hands that mattered. They photograph ruins without understanding what ruined them. The systematic self-destruction gets simplified into historical curiosity. But the lesson remains for those who look. Excellence without adaptability equals extinction. Perfection without humanity becomes perfectly inhuman. Systems that consume their creators leave only consumed creators and empty systems. Sparta achieved everything it valued, and thus achieved nothing at all. The bones in the apothetae tell the truest story. Infant skeletons accumulated across centuries. The price of perfection, paid in children who didn't meet standards. Each tiny skeleton a subtraction from an equation that could only decrease. They threw away their future one imperfect baby at a time. The empty assembly still waits. Stone seats carved for bodies that no longer exist. Laws written on walls with no one to read or enforce them. The perfect government governing nothing perfectly. Form outlasting function. Structure outliving purpose. Architecture as monument to ideological suicide. What remains of Sparta is what Sparta never valued. The helot patience that waited centuries. The human adaptability that accepts change. The simple mathematics of survival over perfection. Everything the Agoge tried to eliminate flourishes in its absence. The warriors are gone. The system is broken. The ideology lies buried with its last adherent. But the fields still grow grain. Children still play in streets. Life continues with the messiness Sparta couldn't tolerate. Imperfection thrives where perfection died. The final lesson writes itself in absence. 800 warriors, then 400, then none. The countdown that began with impossible standards continued through mathematical certainty. They created a system so specialized it couldn't survive generalization, so perfect it couldn't endure imperfection, so successful it succeeded itself into non-existence. Sparta ended not with invasion or catastrophe, but with empty cradles and silent barracks. The perfect warriors won every battle except against time and biology. They defeated external enemies while losing to internal contradictions. They achieved immortality through reputation and mortality through reality. The stones remember what humans forget. These walls heard the last heartbeats of the last believers in a system that consumed itself. These grounds felt the final footsteps of warriors with no war to fight. This emptiness speaks louder than any army Sparta ever fielded. But stones crumble. Memory fades. Legend replaces reality. The Sparta of imagination outlives the Sparta of empty barracks. The perfect warriors march on in stories, unconscious of their extinction. The ideology persists in philosophy, cleaned of its ultimate consequence. Tomorrow, someone will read about Spartan excellence, dream of that martial perfection, miss the empty assembly, the barren wombs, the silence where children's voices should echo. They'll see the warriors but not the absence, the strength but not the sterility, the perfection but not the price. The extinction event completes itself in forgetting, not just biological death but historical transformation. Sparta becomes what it never was through not being what it always was, perfect unto death, remembered unto fiction, extinct unto inspiration. The last lesson waits unlearned, that excellence without humanity equals extinction, that perfection without adaptability achieves only perfect ending, that systems consuming their creators leave nothing but consumed creators and systematic absence. Sparta proved this, absolutely. The proof stands empty, waiting for new students of extinction. The Agoge trains no one. The assembly governs nothing. The warriors exist nowhere but imagination. The perfection achieved its goal. Nothing remains.